call the September 23rd meeting of the Neshoba Regional School Committee to order, and we are meeting via Zoom. At this time, Steve, you ready with your flag? Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So we have one citizen's comment tonight from Tracy and Joel Lindsay. We are writing to request more details on the plans for resuming in-person instruction at the high school. Specifically, what is the schedule for evaluation of return to in-person instruction? E.g., when are the decision points? What specific criteria and thresholds will the school committee use to determine when in-person instruction will resume? Will there be a new survey of parents and teachers, since previously most wanted in-person instruction at least part of the time before we had the full plan? In what manner will decisions be communicated to the high school community? Is the school committee prepared to address the potential that the Education Commissioner, Jeff Riley, may request a reopening plan within 10 days per the Boston.com article below, which states the Baker administration is requesting reopening plans for remote districts with low COVID positivity rates? Additionally, we would like to understand the following. Why can't teachers instruct half of the students remotely and the other half in person simultaneously, which would allow for some in-person instruction without the need to repeat lessons? Avoiding repeating of lessons was a reason given for going remote at the high school. Finally, we want to relate the experience of our high school juniors so far with remote learning. Significant time for each class is being lost due to attendance taking, connectivity issues, and technology issues. We need to understand a timeline for returning the high school to some in-person instruction, at minimum in a hybrid mode, like every other surrounding high school in the area. Okay. The next item is school committee chair updates. I do not have any updates this evening, so I will turn it over to Brooke for the superintendent's report.
Sure, thank you. And I'm going to have Dr. McGuire begin first. He's going to cover teaching and learning and PD, and then I'll talk about residency and school meeting updates, room updates. And I think as I took a look at it, this is more to Dr. McGuire. I know you've got a really short paragraph in there, and yet your teaching and learning department is just working overtime right now within the district. So it's certainly, I know you've just got a couple sentences there, but not indicative of the amount of workload that group is carrying right now. So do you want to speak to the teaching and learning and the PD, please? Todd, can you hear me?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Yep, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. We're going to talk a little bit about the teaching and learning department, as well as professional development we continue to implement in the district. The first thing that I want to mention that's in the superintendent's report this evening is our teaching and learning newsletters. So as a way to continue to communicate the work that the department is doing, not only communicating with teachers, but eventually communicating with our families in the district as a whole, we've begun a teaching and learning department newsletter. So this is going to be a weekly newsletter for right now teachers and staff, with all sorts of information in there and resources, as well as PD opportunities to support the teaching and learning efforts both in and out of the classroom right now. And as we continue to develop these, because they're kind of really new, we'll also be looking to share with families and be posting them to the district webpage. So with that, I just wanted to actually give a taste of that this evening. So I'm going to share my screen with you folks. And everyone see that? So we're calling it the download. So this is our second issue that's gone out, just went out hot off the press today. And just to give you a sense of what we're doing here, we're also working with the medium SMORE, which the high school sends its newsletters out on, as well as I think Principal Bates does the same thing. It's a really useful tool, and we're trying to provide just, you know, kind of an overview of what's going on in the district, as well as in the department, and try to give just kind of a sense of positive information out there to our teachers. So we're doing some spotlighting on instructions. You can see here, giving some messages just around the idea of simplicity. We're giving some specific examples on some lessons. So you'll see some lessons that some teachers are doing here, some information and some how-tos on how to embed, say, a YouTube video, labeling a musical scale, an exercise with dragging dots online with some of our remote learning work. Also, we're doing a lot of updates. So some updates on our reopening and providing some guides for teachers as it relates to not only remote learning, but hybrid learning as well. Some guidelines that we've developed for students and faculty when they're on two-way communication, so that we're keeping some consistency across the district. We're also giving some, and this went out in our memo too from Brooke and I this week, how to improve Google Meet functioning right now, and giving some tips on that to not only teachers, but students and families at the same time. And then we're also going to be highlighting specific media that we're using that come out of our Learn platform. So we've got a lot of technological resources that we're using, a lot of resources that have been vetted, not only by the department, but by teachers. This week, we're vetting and promoting Learning Ally. In there, we've embedded a live tutorial for teachers, as well as the link to our Learn platform, where our teachers can find where all of these resources are housed. We're also having a tips and tricks as well. So to give some useful articles to read, some tips on remote learning, as well as some tips on social emotional learning and technology. Those all specifically relate to the district improvement plan and the goals for the year. And then we're also highlighting what we're doing professionally in the district as it relates to professional development. So this week we're looking for an all call for those to be on our PD committee, that serve on our PD committee, which meets monthly, and where you can email the teaching and learning department for interest, as well as providing opportunities for teachers to get more professional development points by participating in a variety of either webinars or some of the workshops that we offer or put out there from organizations such as the New England Association of Schools and Colleges and a variety of others. So this week we're offering a 10-hour webinar on fostering healthy relationships in the classroom and beyond. And then finally, we're offering our teaching and learning office hours, which are every Wednesday from 12:30 to 2:15. And you'll note that Wednesdays are that full remote day for all of our students. So it's a great day for teachers to check in the afternoon with the teaching and learning department should they need any specific help, one-on-one tutorials, or just a chance to check in with our department. So that's kind of what we're highlighting and what we're beginning to put out there from the teaching and learning department. So it's something that we're pretty excited about and a way to continue to enhance the communication from the teaching and learning perspective in the district. So I'll stop share that one. And then the next piece is professional development. So this Friday will mark our first early release day of the year. Hard to believe that that's already here after we just had 10 great days of PD before we started the year. Friday afternoon is building based, so that's going to allow for each school to work collaboratively. They're going to develop goals and work as a community on district and school priorities. Topics that are included for this week's professional development will include social emotional learning, particularly at the middle school level, literacy at our elementary level, restorative discipline at the high school, and work with our guidance departments on virtual counseling and protocols that in a remote learning environment. Our instructional assistants are going to be working on supporting teachers to prepare materials for in-person and virtual learning, and bringing our behavior specialists together to develop consistency when they're writing current levels of performance data and individual education plans. So we're really excited about the PD we've been able to offer and develop over the summer to start the year, and then really transition into the school year beginning this Friday. So that's my update.
Great, thanks. And I'll just go right into mine, and then if there are questions at the end, we're happy to take the questions. The residency, as school committee members know from past years, we run up against residency issues every year in the district. In fact, we run up against them all year long. I don't think that there's any more this year than we would normally be up against. The only difference this year is I think that people think, particularly the high school, because it's full remote, that they can, the students can live anywhere and they can tap into our programming. And we've done a check that is not allowable. In short, a student must physically reside within one of our 3 communities to be considered an NRHS student, and be able to attend one of our schools in our communities. If a student does not literally sleep in our 3 communities, one of our 3 communities, and they are starting school and we find out, it becomes very messy very quickly, as we have to ask that student to leave. So if parents have any questions at all, or guardians have any questions at all on this, please reach out to your site-based principal and or our offices, and we can help to clarify anything there. The rules have not changed from any other year. It is exactly the same this year as any other year. I just wanted to give the school committee a bit of an update with regards to meeting rooms. Right now, we continue, and I know that we basically have until the first part of October to come forward, but just wanted to let you know that we've been walking the buildings, measuring, taking a look at everything, and trying to pull something together that makes sense, knowing what we normally need for space and what we might need for space. And right now, we continue to go back to center school as the building that makes the most amount of sense for in-person meetings for the school committee. Having the 11 members, or even if it's 10 members that are attending in person, is too many members to put up on a stage, for example, in our auditoriums. So that doesn't work. And then when you start to add the number of administrators that are always there, for example, Anne-Marie, Pat, myself, Todd, Alita, and then you add anybody else like we are tonight, pretty quickly that 8 people per 1,000 feet fills up very quickly. So the nice thing about center school, of course, is in the cafeteria, it has that movable wall, and we can move that back and have an instant 6,000 additional square feet. So right now we tend to find ourselves going back to, well, center school is kind of setting the bar for us. One of the biggest problems, of course, is the technology. Now, I know that Rich, want to thank Rich Eckel for helping to support some thinking on the side. And we're going to try to take a look at some of the things that he had suggested. We also brought in somebody to have a look yesterday. And I know Alita was in that meeting. And Alita, if you want to add anything in here tonight, please feel free to do that. We're looking at the ability to tape. We want to thank Stowe TV for being there as well. And we know that Bolton TV, we've had lots of communication with them as well to see if that might be something to just have Bolton come along and tape it as well over there. We are looking at the potential of 2 things. One is just one single standalone wide angle lens. And that may be what we're ultimately going to end up with. And or one of the suggestions that came out at yesterday's meeting was 2 additional cameras that can be activated. No matter what we do, and no matter how we put the equipment in there, it was made crystal clear to us that we will have to have somebody there, excuse me, who can operate the equipment at every meeting. And this kind of doesn't surprise us, because quite frankly, before Bolton TV did What they did in our school committee room, we had to have, those of you who remember back a couple of years ago, we had to always have somebody in there running that equipment. This is more technologically advanced equipment though, so you wouldn't be able to have like a high school student come in and run it, for example. We're gonna have somebody specialized with this kind of thing come in and operate it. We do thank Bolton and Stowe TV folks for working with us here as we try to pull something together. In terms of costs, and one of the things that I know Rich had mentioned and we'd looked into as well was microphones at each computer station, so to speak. The rough cost that they've given us for the microphones is in the neighborhood of about $10,000. And then we have the equipment thereafter. And then the other thing that we're looking at is, can it be mobile or it doesn't have to be fixed? And so we're looking into both possibilities with that as well. So we wanted you to know that this is ongoing. We continue to look into it and we'll let you know where we land. A final thought too, and Alita, if I've missed anything important, I hope that you'll chime in. There's a 10-week lead time for the equipment once it's ordered. So we would want you to know that there will be a 10-week lead time there before the product lands in the school district. So that's just a brief update on where that's at. Alita, did I miss anything that you think that I should put out there, or did I cover everything?
I don't think so. Nikki from Bolton Access TV also joined us this morning at the meeting.
Brooke,
So
does the plan include the capacity to allow members to participate remotely?
that's what the whole premise of the meeting was for.
Yeah.
Okay. And because there is a cost involved, it would have to get the school committee approval before we moved ahead. So we would want to know what the plan would be, what the cost would be, and then the school committee would have to discuss it and make a decision.
Yeah. Tonight, I just wanted to update you and let you know that
Thank
this
you.
is still ongoing work for us. And I just want to thank everybody that's involved. Chi, Rob, Alita, and our Stowe folks. And Bolton, thank you again to our TV folks for joining us too. So thanks to everybody that's working so hard on this.
So I know we're going to have an update on high school, the remote learning at the high school, but I also know that some members had questions, which I passed along relative to other opening issues. Do you want to address those now, or do you want to wait till after the high school does their presentation?
No, can we wait till after? Did you send those along to me, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, I'll have to go back and take a look because I don't remember seeing it.
Brooke,
I
I
think
think those were the ones that Amy had sent along that we had.
Oh, yes,
put
then
out to
that,
the
yes.
principals.
Is that what
So
you're
we do-
talking about, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, then yes,
We do
we're
have-
fine. Yeah, we can
We do
deal
have
with
the
that.
answers to those.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for Brooke specific to this update? Leah?
Brooke, I'm sorry. Did you say how much is the equipment you're estimating could cost?
No, that was just the microphones. The microphones were around the $10,000 mark. So that's not everything. That was just the microphones.
Okay, that's
Well,
absurd.
we don't have a total cost, but they said that they assured us that we would have it for the first week of October. So I'll know then, and I'll make sure that I get it out to you.
Okay, so that's a lot. The other thing I wanted to ask you really quickly is, could you just one more time? I've been trying to do some reading on this. Can you explain one more time why a classroom of children can gather in a space that's less than 1,000 square feet, but a public body cannot do the same?
No, I cannot. And I cannot answer that because honestly, it makes no sense to me. And I couldn't agree with you more. I would say to you that we were told pretty consistently, especially in the last 2 to 3 weeks before school opened, that the rules did not apply to the public schools and opening in a lot of ways. But, and I hear certainly the questions with regards to, reopening and such, but right now, things haven't changed for us. I know that we're not talking about the high school right now, but all of the issues that presented themselves 3 weeks ago are still in play right now. And the truth of the matter is, in our district, we have on average anywhere from 5 to 10 people being tested every day for COVID. It's just going to take one day when all those tests come back positive and we will be in the red zone. And I think sometimes that gets lost. And I think people, things are feeling good because we've got as good an opening as we could have had. And I think that sometimes it gets lost that we're still in the middle of that pandemic, unless you were like Todd and I sitting with our nurse leader going through every case. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes I think it can be forgotten, but those things that were problematic to us before are still problematic. So no, I have no answer for you on that, Lee, and I apologize, but I think I have no answer because there really is no answer.
Okay. Other questions for Brooke about her update? Elaine?
This is fine if this is something that you'd prefer to discuss at a later meeting, but since the high school folks are here, I thought I would at least mention it. I would love to hear more about the restorative discipline, the PD, and overall.
Elaine, just a point of order, please.
Sorry.
We can, when we haven't segued into the high school update, the questions should pertain to Brooke's update, but when the high school does their presentation, I think that would be an appropriate time to ask that question.
Okay, I thought the presentation would be specifically on reopening, so that's why.
And it probably,
Yeah, but you know how we are. We don't stick to the topic. You just sidle in to something else. But I just wanted to make sure there were no more questions about Brooke's update.
Okay.
Mike?
I think Amy has a question.
Oh,
and
I'm
Mike.
sorry. Amy and then Mike.
My question has to do with staffing update at the last meeting.
I think that's going to be covered. Again, I wanted the questions about the items that Brooke talked about.
This is district wide. Like,
Can we move on to the high school and then do the staffing and the reopening? I sent all of the questions to Todd and to Brooke, and they indicated that they were going to, I asked if they wanted to include those questions now or after the high school, and it sounds like we're going to do it after the high school, correct?
Right.
So just
Okay,
sit tight,
sorry.
we'll get to them. Mike?
Yeah, a question for Todd's update, the teaching and learning publication, which I thought was awesome. Just a couple points of clarification. What was the frequency of how often that was being distributed? Who are the recipients and how are they receiving it? In other words, are they receiving it in their inbox, or are they receiving it passively and accessible on a website?
They are receiving it weekly. Again, this is only the second one, so it's a work in progress. We're trying this out. We are sending it out. It landed in everybody's inbox in the district, NRSD, in their inbox today. So that last week and then this week. And so we're kind of doing a pilot with this first, and then with the success of it, with feedback, we want to then be posting it on our website. And then it would be something that, we would pick and choose little things from it that we would get out to families, because it's highly designed for teachers. Obviously, like, families won't be looking for PDPs,
Right.
but a lot of the tips and tricks that are in there would be very helpful for kids and for families. So we're going to start parsing it out and saying, okay, maybe we'll do a second one that, is a little bit shorter that would then start putting out to families. But this is a trial thing on the communication first with the district. But so far, so good. We've got some great feedback on it so far.
Okay.
Oh, great, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions about the superintendent's update? Seeing none, Brooke, I will turn the next section of new business over to you.
Sure, thank you. So I know that Steve is here with his team. So nice to see everyone. I see Matt, John, Janine here, and Tanya, and we thank you all for joining us tonight. Very excited to hear what you have to say, and we'll be sure to ask lots of really good questions when you're done. So you had asked, the school committee had asked for a kind of a broad overarching view, that 50,000 foot view to what's going on in the high school right now with the remote learning. And so they're prepared to present on that tonight. So Steve, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you guys for having us here tonight. I appreciate it. And I have to thank my team, because, and you mentioned all their names, but it's really great to have them. They're so smart, and they keep me on track, and they're just awesome. So I can't say enough about them. Alita, can you share our PowerPoint?
We'll just give her a second here. Alita, we can't tell if you heard Steve or not. There we go. She did. Thank you, Alita.
Perfect. Thank you very much. You can go to the next slide if you would. So essentially, we firmly believe our remote schedule provides students access to their teachers all day, every day, just as we talked about when we presented you guys back a couple of weeks ago. Basically, this is the roadmap for where we're at. And when we started off trying to figure out three different phases. And I don't really want to get into that a whole lot. Essentially, we realized that the remote model seemed to be the best. We presented that to you folks. And once we were given the okay to move forward with that, we then brought the plan to the task force, who is made up of parents, teachers, students, and other folks that were involved in the whole process of looking at full remote and hybrid earlier in the presentation, in the process of this whole thing. And one of the biggest things, the students especially, and teachers as well, but one of the biggest things that they're concerned with was the amount of screen time that students would have if they were on the screen all day long for 6 hours. And we heard that, we understood that, and we took that into consideration when we put our plan together. And Mrs. Boulay is going to go into that when she gets into the schedule a little bit more. We then sent out our remote learning handbook to our families, and I'm not going to lie to you. I had some folks that were concerned because they saw that we had synchronous and asynchronous learning going on at that point. The asynchronous time period is the teachers are giving students lessons that they don't have to be on the computer the whole time for, but the teachers are very much involved, and if the students have questions, they can ask the teachers during that time period. And Janine will get into that a little bit more as well. Once we sent that out, I got those emails back. For the most part, I explained to them what our thought processes were, and 99% of the folks understood completely, and it made total sense to them, and we were all good to go with that at that point. We then tried to put together, we wanted our task force to be able to explain some of the things that they talked about, and we put that video together. And I apologize for the video. I'm not a very good movie star here, and I apologize for that right up front. But when we sent out that survey to ask for people's thoughts on or questions that they might have, we only had 7 responses from people, and there were only 16 questions, and probably a quarter of them were about where we could go to the bathroom from student type things. So ultimately, what we did with the survey, with our video, is we tried to answer the questions. And I think we put the survey out before we knew we were coming on with you folks. I think a lot of the stuff we talked about, I hope you guys saw it, because a lot of the stuff that you guys asked us to talk about here was taken care of in that survey. Once the survey went out, we received only positive responses. There wasn't a single negative response on the survey. So we were really happy with that. And we're really happy with how things are going at this point at the high school. I've been really stressing that we want to crawl, walk, run, because we want to get the kids back into school mode first. Once we get them there, we can start getting into a lot more, hardcore lesson type things. But the kids have been out for 6 months. We're trying to acclimatize them to being back in the building, back in the educational area that we're at right now. So we'll go to the next slide. I think the next slide is just kind of an overview of what we're gonna talk about. The quality of instruction, community and health and safety, and I'm going to turn it over to my group here. I think Janine's going to go first, going over the schedule and trying to explain a little bit the synchronous, asynchronous situation of how things work.
Now, Steve, while we're turning this over to Janine, just a reminder to our community and to our school committee members that we have new administration in place. So maybe, Steve, do you just want to do, before Janine speaks, just maybe do a quick introduction of the administrators that are with you. And Tanya, Rich, we thank you again for being with us. And you and Steve are a legacy for sure.
Well, Janine and John are our 2 new assistant principals, and they've been godsends. And Matt Biggs is our is not new to us because he was with us last year, but now he's in the Dean of Students position. And he's done great work with the whole discipline type stuff. And we're really looking into this restorative justice kind of thing for the discipline, because we can't do discipline the same way we did it when kids were in school. So we've been having a lot of conversations about that. We'd be happy to talk to you about it, but we're still in the process of putting it together too. So
Thank you.
Tanya especially. Tanya's my rock. Can we go to the next slide, Alita, and Janine can start up?
Great. So hello, everyone. Nice to join you again. Just want to kind of echo what Steve was saying around the challenges that we were grappling with when we were looking at the hybrid schedule versus a fully remote schedule. In the hybrid schedule, when we were following DESE guidelines and bringing in cohorts of students, what we noticed was that, you know, the majority of the time that students had in their instruction was remote, and they were only really seeing their teachers live 1 day a week. And we wanted to find a solution to that. So this schedule was kind of a way to come up with a solution where students had access to their teachers every day, but it also took into consideration students' engagement with learning and technology. So it does provide them with a balanced day in terms of on-screen and off-screen time, which was something that both the students and teachers and parents on our task force were really concerned with. So I'll just kind of go through the schedule, starting with Wednesday, starting with today. So you can see we're running all of our periods, A through G, for those shortened periods are about 25 minutes each. And that is what we're calling live. So we started to use the word live for synchronous instruction and then on demand for asynchronous instruction, just for some kind of student friendly language as we went through it with them. So on Wednesday in the morning hours, students see all of their teachers. They have all of their classes, A through G, live. And then they have their lunch break, and then it turns into that on-demand learning. So maybe, you know, their teacher said, read these chapters in a novel this afternoon, or do some practice problems. It could be work that they're doing away from the computer entirely, or work that, you know, they're doing on screen. But Wednesday afternoon is completely for students to kind of work at their own pace, have flexibility in their schedules. And then you can kind of take that idea and apply it to the other days as well. So you see Monday, we're running all of the classes, but we kind of developed a structure where students could anticipate what subjects they would have live versus what subjects they would have on demand on different days. And we split them up by subject areas. So on Monday, they're live with English, math, wellness, world languages. And then on Tuesday, they're live with social studies, science, technology, business, and arts. And we were purposeful in the way that we decided around which subjects should be paired together too. For example, we didn't want to have English and social studies live all on the same day, very heavy reading and writing subjects. And vice versa, we didn't want math and science live all on the same day. So we were trying to achieve balance for students in terms of their screen time and in terms of the kinds of studies that they're taking on each day. So in this case, you can see, you know, if a student has an English class, period A, and a social studies class, period B, they'll log on to their Google Meet, period A, and they'll have English for that entire period live with their teacher. This could include, you know, going into breakout rooms, having some small group instruction, the teachers kind of going around to the different breakout rooms and checking in on progress. So it is fully a period of full interaction with the teacher and their peers. Period B, then perhaps is social studies. It's not a live day, it's an on-demand day for social studies. But so the students are still logging in at the beginning of the period with their teacher, with their whole class. The teacher is checking in on the students' well-being, also asking if there are any pressing questions, maybe setting them up with some more detailed instructions for the material, for the lesson for the day. And then after those 5 minutes, the teacher kind of sets the students off to work on their own, at their own pace. They have a deadline for when that assignment is due. And if a student wants more support, the teacher is still there on the Google Meet link, right? So the student can stay on and work with the teacher, maybe in a small group or individually, and get the help and the support that they need. If not, they can move on and work asynchronously. And then it flips throughout the day, throughout the week. And so when we were designing this, and we did have a lot of student input in this part when we were working with the task force, again, it was meant to achieve balance of screen time and also give the students, consistency, predictability, and flexibility. It was a way of kind of achieving all of those things. And so far, we've had a lot of success with the students feeling like, okay, I know that I'm getting live instruction for part of the day, and then I have this ability to work at my own pace for these other assignments. And I have the support of my teacher there when I have additional questions. That's kind of just the gist of how the schedule has been working for us in the few days that we've launched so far. Alita, if you want to switch to the next screen, I think Matt will take over and talk about some in-person opportunities.
Hello again, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction, Steve. That was very nice of you to say. Stepping into this new role was unfamiliar for me, but it was an exciting opportunity to really kind of work with the three of my colleagues and figure out how we were going to do the things that we decided we were going to do. So 2 weeks ago now, we decided to roll into a new student orientation model that we planned on using for the remainder of the year to help bring kids back on campus in a more safe and a more organized way. So a little bit of background into what new student orientation looked like. We staged campus so that we only had one entrance and one exit, so that we never had our multiple different groups of new students coming in at the same time and in the same location to keep our numbers down, especially with our gatherings. So once our students arrived, we ensured that, of course, we were being compliant with our masks and then ensuring that our students were socially distanced as well. So if you look at the pictures to the right, you have the students in the auditorium where they were receiving a brief overview of what administration would look like and what their opportunities would be at the high school. And then you can see a quick little icebreaker activity that the guidance department was leading as well. So first and foremost, it was so great having students back on campus and in the building. Just to be able to see a student's face reminds us of really why we're doing all these different things. The key takeaway that we took away from new student orientation is the pick a time reservation model that we used. Pick a time is something that we use for parent-teacher conferences, but we kind of had to redesign the platform to use it for a reservation system. What parents and students were able to do is they were able to go onto this platform and pick a time where they could come onto campus that was most convenient for them, while still allowing us to keep our numbers down for the number of individuals on campus. So I always envisioned it as when you go to make a reservation at a restaurant, it's 3 clicks and you have your table and you can go enjoy your night. So being able to do that for this model as well took some pressure off of us in terms of scheduling and hopefully made it easier for our community to find a time that worked for them as well. Moving on to material and book pickup. Obviously, when you have over 900 students at the high school, getting them all the materials that they need for remote learning was an interesting challenge that the 4 of us kind of designed and figured out. So what we ended up doing was just, if you aren't aware, we just made a drive-through and utilized the ability to drive completely around the building at the high school. So students were able to have their schedule and then stop at each department along the way to get what they needed. It worked really well, which was exciting, but we realized that students need different materials throughout the year. So we're going to utilize a very similar system on the first Wednesday of every month to get students the materials that they need, whether it be an English book or whether that be an entomology field kit. At the high school, it could look very differently. Also at the high school, we redesigned a student support center. So it's a welcoming workspace for our students that they can use at their leisure, whether it be for a more structured environment or whether it be a more comfortable environment for students to get their work done. It's a flexible opportunity for students to still come in and use the building. When talking about these reservation systems and future in-person opportunities, we want to make sure that our students aren't completely isolated for the remainder of the year. What we're looking to do is bring people on campus in a safe and concise manner, and things like class meetings, community building activities for our students, so that we can see our students in person while still being safe, utilizing the outdoor facilities that we have to our availability. We put interschool collaboration in here because so many of our neighboring high schools are doing different things with their different types of facilities. So we're collaborating with other schools, especially within our specific area, to allow us to bounce some ideas off each other and really utilize the work that everyone else is doing in our area as well. So with that being said, I will pass the baton on to Tanya Rich, our athletic director, who will briefly talk about athletics.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you everyone for having me tonight. So as you guys know, our fall season 1 began on Friday. Right now we have cross country for boys and girls, golf, field hockey, and boys and girls soccer running. And so far things have been very well. I've been very impressed. I met with all of our teams on Friday before we had our first tryout session to discuss our new protocols and guidelines and what my expectations were moving into our weekend of tryouts. And I cannot explain how impressed I've been with our coaches and our students. Everybody's got their masks on, they're staying socially distant, and they're using the hand sanitizer that we have hand sanitizing stations all over campus, attached to fences, to posts, to our bleachers. We have them everywhere, and our facilities department did a great job setting all that up for us. So we're in practice this week, and our teams are doing well. We don't start competitions for a couple weeks. We've got 2.5 weeks of preseason to practice all of our new rule modifications and to get these protocols in hand. But things are going very well so far, better than I expected. I was very nervous going into the first day, and I've been impressed since day one. Moving forward, our winter, our fall 2 and spring seasons are definitely up in the air. The state will give us more guidelines as we get closer to those seasons, but right now our focus is on fall 1, and it could do this successfully with everybody. Next slide.
Hi, everybody. So we wanted to highlight student health. That's obviously a big factor for us and a priority. And so we wanted to walk you through some of the elements of things that we've done and things that we want to continue to do and have a focus on. So starting on the left, we had a wonderful partnership that the guidance department made with UMass Medical around trauma-informed practices, and we were able to deliver that PD to all of our teachers in those pre-in-service days. It was a 3-hour training, very in-depth opportunity for students to learn about trauma, its effects, and how to work with students with trauma as an experience. And I think the case could be made that many of our students have trauma as a result of COVID and the last 6 months and what they've encountered and experienced. We've also, thanks to teaching and learning, put together quite a few SEL, social emotional learning, professional development opportunities in addition to the trauma. We had content in SEL for an overview so that we can all sort of be on the same page about what does social emotional learning mean when we're talking about it, so that we have a foundational understanding of it. We talked about educator self-care. It's important for educators to be thinking about that and be mindful of that. We were all stressed to the max. It's probably one of the worst times ever to be in education. And we all know how important it is for teachers to be thinking about that and for staff members to be thinking about that. So we gave them content on self-care and relationship building. That's an obvious, right? Where at the high school we are remote, and so we need to be thinking about how do we form bonds and connections with students in a remote world. How do we do it in person is equally as important, but it's more difficult to do it remotely. So we talked through some of that, and we'll continue to do some of that work as well. I won't spend a lot of time on the Student Support Center. It's something that Jody Sept has talked about at school committee meetings in the past. It's a wonderful opportunity. We have, that as an option for students right now and going forward. And lastly, we have a continuing focus on SEL and student well-being. We'll we use Wednesdays to do professional development for teachers going forward. And that is in prime time for us to make an impact and make some gains around SEL implementation and learning. We also, have this really kind of neat opportunity, which is kind of weird to think about, right? Like this whole pandemic and situation has not been good. But we talk a lot about, to use Janine's word, the silver lining of this. And it's causing a lot of people to think about their practices. And I think that from an SEL perspective, teachers are in a situation where if they weren't prioritizing SEL before, they know that they have to, right? And so it's allowed us to really get more buy-in from people and more openness to the discussion. And it's really set a situation where teachers are craving this. They want, hey, tell me more, how do we do this? It's also provided opportunities for us in administration. When you think about student discipline, as Mr. Cullinane talked about at the beginning, how do you do discipline when your students are remote? And so we're having conversations here as an admin team about just that and about reimagining our own practices. We talked as an admin team, and we talked about the idea of using restorative justice and restorative components. And frankly, like this is an avenue where I've personally been like super, super passionate about in my previous roles. And it's hard to get people to buy in sometimes to this concept, even though the research is there. And when we talked about it as a team, I was so happy because Janine was like, yes, this is what I used to do, right? This is what we did in our old district. Steve was, so excited about the idea of it. And it's who Matt is as a person. And so, we think about how do we do restorative practices here? One of the, barriers to that is not a barrier here. We're all on the same page. And so, using Steve's adage of crawl, walk, run, we want to start with this. We want to start probably a little bit slowly, but really develop this into something that we can continue beyond COVID. And lastly, we have on the slide there guidance opportunities. There's a tremendous opportunity of time here for guidance to be able to connect with students, both individually and in small groups, but also on larger topics and with larger numbers. We could do a presentation to the junior class on dating violence, for instance, or there's so many different topics, and Jody Specht has been so excited about potentially using Wednesdays for these types of assemblies and whatnot. So we think there's some real opportunities there that we're very excited about. I think you can go, Alita, to the next slide. And that's back to Mr. Cullinane.
Yep. And essentially the last step on our road was reevaluation and adjustment. And I didn't cover it because I knew it was coming here. We're working with our departments and with the department heads and the teachers to reevaluate every day. We want to see what's working, what's not working, and then we're trying to adjust our practices to make sure we're doing them the best that we can. So that's our presentation. Would be happy to answer any questions you might have. And that's the link to that awful video.
And it is an awesome video. Thank you very much.
I said awful video.
No, it's an awesome video. Steve, I just want to mention too, you had mentioned this, but I mean, I know, for example, it's even on my own calendar that you folks meet so regularly at the end of the day, just to touch base and say, what happened today, what went right, what went wrong, what do we need to tweak, what do we need to do to get better? And I know that you do it every single day because I see it there. So I just want to thank you so much for all of the efforts that you're all doing to get this thing going. And I do think, John, you said it so nicely, but the truth is, and we've said this, Todd and I've said this many times, in all of this strangeness and all of this weirdness, there are so many opportunities. And I think we need to seize those and capitalize on them. And I think we're going to learn a lot. And I think, John, it was either you or Matt that said, we need to look beyond COVID and say, what can we carry forward, right? And so I think that you're just doing some great work over there, and it's really exciting to see play out. And Tanya, you have no idea, because you and I have talked a number of times about, if this doesn't work well, we're shutting this down like tomorrow type thing. And you're reporting to me on Saturday and Sunday, that's going great. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. So I am so proud of our kids and our coaches right now, and our parents. This is just all so strange. This wasn't at the high school, but I thought I'd just mention a couple of, from the mouths of our children this week, a couple of quick things for whatever, because Tanya, you'd mentioned about hand sanitizers, and I was in one classroom and I said, I'm just curious, like, what do you notice is one of the biggest changes when you came back for the students? And of course, some of the kids are saying, the masks and that kind of thing. And one little guy was sitting at the back of the room, and he had his hand up and he said, I honestly think our school has more hand sanitizers than it has students. And I thought, yeah, that just shows you how many hand sanitizers we have across the school district. And another little fellow, this is a little grade 6 student, say to me, he said, Superintendent Clenchey, it's just going to be so much better. As soon as we get the vaccine, we'll all be back to normal. And I thought, isn't it interesting, that even our 6th graders know that vaccine is so important. But I think the funniest thing came from a grade 7 student, and I was talking to the class, and he had his hand up. He's sitting at the back of the room as well, and he said, I just want to say thank you. And I thought, oh, how nice is that? Somebody's saying thank you. I wasn't really thinking about that, and I didn't say much. And he said, I just want to thank you for giving my parents a break. I didn't know whether to sit and laugh or cry. I came back and I said to Todd after we were doing a debrief, and I said, part of me just wanted to burst out laughing because it was just so true. I mean, it was so funny and so true. And part of me just wanted to cry because I thought, yeah, I know this is just so hard on everybody. And it's just not lost on me how difficult this is for everyone. So to see our limited sports starting to come together, to see our freshman orientation come together, to see some of this, and even I think it was Matt, as you were talking about the drive-through. I mean, you guys have got that down pretty slick right now. That whole drive-through, it's quite the event. If you've not watched that at the high school, it's quite the event to watch unfold. So you're just doing a terrific job over there. So we'll turn it over to the school committee and see if they've got some questions for anyone.
I just like to say one thing. The question and answer stuff, that the teachers are doing an unbelievable job. They're so upbeat and so excited about what they're doing, and I think they're really looking at this as an opportunity to learn new things and do things differently. And they're the ones that wanted to keep the question and answer stuff going. I mean, they enjoy the discussion and that kind of thing. So I appreciate you bringing that up. That's important.
You're talking about at the day's end, the question and answer at the day's end. Yeah, every day is part of your culture right now in your high school.
Yep.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Questions for our school committee members? Oh, Kathy, we can't hear you.
I can. Okay, I want to open it up to questions. Please wait to be recognized, and one question at a time. So who has a question? Steve.
My question is, and it's not necessarily restricted to the high school, but are we finding, I'm seeing a lot of comments about technological problems and difficulties signing on and staying on and all of this kind of thing. Has she noted particular problems, and I'm sure if he has, he's working on them, but this seems to be a general complaint about getting on, staying on, or signing on and staying on, and all of this kind of thing. This seems to be the biggest level of complaints right now that I'm seeing.
So I think, Todd, you can, Dr. McGuire can speak to that. That's exactly one of the reasons why we sent that memo out yesterday and why he had this again on the teaching and learning document. So Dr. McGuire, can you just touch base on that quickly, please?
Sure. I met with technology and Chi this week because over the weekend we did a really comprehensive test because we were getting feedback from people that they were either getting kicked off of a Google Meet and that things were sometimes could be slow. And so with all the comprehensive testing, we were actually able to go into individual Chromebooks to see the levels at which the usage was at, that they were at. And so with all the testing that, we were doing, we were seeing a lot of the Chromebooks were getting up into their max. And so the guidance that went out, that you would see that went out in our memo that went out, provided families as well as teachers with steps to take within the Chromebooks, or even an at-home device, whether it be a laptop or anything, to making sure that they did not have multiple windows open at the same time. That if they're in a Google Meet session, that should be the only thing that they have open on their device, as well as making sure that they are shutting down at the end of each day completely, and then logging on the next morning, because the automatic updates happen every single night. So those were troubleshooting pieces. And in terms of looking at all of the statistical data, all of our data in terms of bandwidth, et cetera, was fantastic. Any issues that were coming through were actually from the Google platform, and it had everything to do with, as we predicted, every school district probably across the country is using Google and the Google suite and the Google platform to be housing all of this. And so any of the slow issues rest with Google, which is why we have also accepted Zoom and gotten a Zoom account for every teacher in the district. And the Zoom updates should be coming within the next month. As they say, they're working on updating their system as well for two-way communication. So right now our teachers are using Zoom for meetings within the school with other colleagues, as well as school meetings, before we roll it out to our students. I know that was one of the questions that Amy put forward. So that too is our next rollout for two-way communication. But those were the troubleshooting tips that we were able to put out. And I can tell you that it is consistent across school districts, just right across the board, as we anticipated, and it is a Google issue.
I think one of the things that I want to put out there too, and we've said this all along, this was one of our concerns even in August as we were looking forward. We felt that Neshoba was in a good place. Our bigger concern was right across the country, because everybody is doing this in some form or another. And, we had talked with Chief, and his concern was, is the country ready for what's happening right now? So I think the problem is bigger than ours. We upgraded substantially with our bandwidth, and you heard Todd just talk now about adding Zoom to our suite of tools. So I think we've done everything we possibly can. But there are just some basics. For example, like when we go on to our Zoom meetings with the commissioner is a perfect example, and he'll have 500 people on that meeting. The first thing they do is tell us to make sure that we have our cameras off and our sound off, so that we can all maintain our connectivity to the Zoom meeting. So those are just tips that we're learning, and we're going along and letting folks know about. So I think, Leah, before you, did you not?
Excuse me, Brooke, excuse me. I saw Steve's hand up. So if you're, do you have more to say? Or can I continue with the questions? Thank you. Rich, I saw your hand. Did you have a question?
I had more of a comment that's related to this technology issue. My daughter came to me as we were making dinner tonight and said that, they did this survey of the kids, and they found out that if you leave your windows open, that, it's affecting the technology. And of course, she thought it meant literally the windows and the house were open. So you may want to refer to them as tabs, because I was very perplexed that, that would be the diagnosis coming from the administration, that they were telling people that they needed to shut the windows to the outside of their house in the meeting. So
Noted. Thank you.
And one other quick point. I don't believe a lot of people around here have fiber optic connections. Some of the people in Stowe have FiOS, but most of the internet connections that people have around here are asymmetrical on Comcast. And that means that your upload is much slower than your download. And what that ultimately means is for doing Zoom and stuff like this, you're actually broadcasting as you're downloading. And so if you have an asymmetrical connection, your upload is much slower. See if you can get that upgraded, because that'll dramatically improve. Remember, you're not just watching something, you're sending something up.
Thank you. Leah, Amy, and then Mike.
So I have several questions, but I want to ask one right now, and that is what I heard you just say, and I think what I'm experiencing in my own home is a hardware deficiency. So it's not so much bandwidth, and we have FiOS, so our connection is fine, but it's really hard to just do this with 1, 2, or even just 3 tabs open because the kids are being asked to do multiple things to manage their workload. And so I guess that begs the question, do we need to upgrade the hardware, the Chromebooks?
Okay, thank you. I wrote it down, so we'll come back to it. Amy? Amy, unmute.
Sorry, it took me a minute. I was expecting somebody to answer Leah's question.
Well, certainly
I wasn't prepared to unmute myself.
We can respond, like Todd can certainly respond to in part to that, but I think that there'll probably be I don't know that we have the perfect answer tonight, Leah, to your question, but I think, we've certainly had this discussion. But Todd, maybe you might just want to speak to Leah's question first. Amy.
Mike, please intervene. Excuse me. If I could, I'd like to see what Amy and Mike have on their minds, and then we can come back to that. If they're all technology related, then we can get them all out there, and then maybe Todd can address them. So we'll come back to the hardware question. Amy, what's your question?
I also have more than one question, but I'll start with thanking the administration for giving the presentation tonight and all the work that went into giving us that update. And I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more on the plan for extracurricular activities and labs. How labs are going to be run at the high school. Because I think after the initial presentation, I walked away with the belief that those were going to be worked in on Wednesdays. And I'm confused now that the Wednesday schedule shows asynchronous learning in the afternoon about how that would work.
Wednesdays could definitely be used to bring folks in. We're only 4 days into school at this point. We're trying to get ourselves back into the swing of teaching again. And I think we're going to try to have some class meetings in the next couple of weeks to bring different classes in to go over what our plans are, what our discipline type things are, what the expectations are for the students. And as I said before, everything that we do, we're learning from. And at that point, we'll start bringing people into the building a little bit more. I can't give you a solid answer on that yet because we don't have a plan in place. But again, it's only been 4 days with kids, so it's coming. I just don't know when.
And we'll be getting updates at each of the meetings relative to the high school, but all the schools, correct, Brooke?
Yeah, we'll talk about it at every meeting because there's always so much happening.
Okay, Mike?
Sorry, I have a follow-up because I think you were answering about labs, but is that true for extracurricular activities as well in terms of trying to figure out how that would look? Because
yeah, again, we're crawling at this point, and when we get into the walk phase, we'll start making some decisions on those type things. I think that clubs and things like the extracurriculars, we can get them going. I just want to make sure that we've got the educational side first, and then we'll get into the extracurriculars after.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to follow Amy's lead by thanking the administration for coming out tonight and presenting to us. I appreciate that. There was one slide that you presented that discussed professional development of social emotional learning and students' mental health. And I'm wondering if you have any insight that you can share about how these newly acquired strategies are being deployed for both students who have already been identified as potentially being at risk, and then maybe just in general, just as check-ins for students who might not be on our radar, but might be going through something unbeknownst to teachers or staff members.
Surprisingly enough, we've already had a number of those within the first 4 days, and the students have had. This has been a very difficult time period for everybody, and we realize that, and the teachers are letting us know if there's something coming up with a student in a classroom. And that's really what our student support center is going to end up being a help in. If we have students that are having difficulties, we can bring them into the student support center and actually work with them in person in those type situations. Mr. Kroll, can you answer that any better than I just did? He's more of our SEL guru.
I think there's a couple things. One is we have probably the best guidance department in the state of Massachusetts. I would throw that out there. I mean, they're just a wonderful group and they're so committed. And I think their MO is to be on top of this as they possibly can be. You know, one of the things that we talked about in our last meeting, the last school committee meeting that we were part of, was the panorama surveys. And, you know, that's a proactive sort of approach to really try to get a sense of where our students are, both where they're, where they've been, mentally, but where they are right now. And I know that our guidance folks are working very hard on crafting a proactive plan to address the needs that come as a result of that survey. We've heard from about 60 to 70% of the students so far. We're still waiting for the other surveys to come in, which should be middle of next week, give or take. So that's a big element for sure.
Right, thank you.
That answer your question, Mike?
It does, thank you.
Okay. Elaine, you had your hand up before about restorative justice. Did you have another question?
Yeah, actually, and I would love to hear more details about restorative justice when they are available. But what I was actually looking for tonight was indicated in the presentation that this was not something that was just remote learning necessitated, and that they were planning on carrying this forward into the future, kind of in a post-COVID world as well. So I was looking to hear. So it's great. So thank you. My question, I guess, is that I know there's only 4 days into the school year, and I know that people need to have time to build a routine and to get into a rhythm of things. But I do think everyone's ultimate goal is to bring students back into the building, whether that's hybrid or fully return to the building. The case numbers are really volatile. So even if we set that aside, it seems like there are still logistical challenges or this routine challenge that you don't want to be constantly changing everything on the students, on the staff, on the family. So again, leaving case numbers aside, what do you think is kind of reasonable for a reevaluation of it? Are people comfortable enough that we could change it on them again?
I don't think they're comfortable enough at this moment, because I think we're just starting to get into the remote side of it. I'm hopeful that the numbers will change, and by the time they start changing, we can then implement the hybrid plan that we had put in place before we decided to go to remote. I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't say when that might be. That's the hard thing, and it's a terrible answer, and I know that, but it's the truth, so.
And again, I just want to point out too, with the number of kids, not just kids, but kids and staff that we see go off to be tested every day. You don't know. We honestly don't know. From where, I mean, when I think even before I left for the weekend on the Friday afternoon, we knew that we may have the possibility of a cluster. And so we had a group meeting with the Department of Health Monday morning. I didn't know all weekend long what was going to happen until that Monday morning. This is just so volatile. There is no crystal ball. And I just think it would be foolish for us to say, yeah, this is where it's going to go, because I don't want to be held to that right now, because we just truly don't know right now. Now, luckily Monday morning, those tests all came back negative, but if they'd come back positive, we would be sitting here in a very different meeting tonight.
I want to check to see, because I want to circle back to the issue about the hardware. Is anyone who has not yet asked a question, do you have a question? I do. I wanted to know more about the Student Support Center. How is it used? By whom? How is scheduling done for it? And what about staffing?
Sure. knowing what we were getting into, Jody Specht and myself, back in probably March or April, we started looking at trying to implement the Student Support Center. Because we realized that we had, from March till June, we had some students that weren't doing any work at all. And there wasn't a lot that we could do from at that point. So Jody, this is Jody's baby. She put it together. And we had a room that was right inside the front door for some students that have a hard time getting into the building. It was the perfect storm, so to speak, because we could set it up right where we needed it. It's being utilized by 1 or 2 students at this point, but the vision is that any student that's having any difficulties, we'll be able to bring them in and have some one-on-one time with a guidance counselor. Mr. E, who usually works with our freshman study skills kind of thing, is working out of that room there as well. So I think it's gonna be very helpful once things start moving forward, when we start figuring out who needs to be there and who doesn't.
Okay, thank you. Someone who has not asked a question. Anyone? Okay, so I know that Amy and Leah had additional questions. Steve, I just saw your hand go up. Question?
Yes. My question concerns if something arises, for example, in one of the elementary schools, and we have to go to full remote. Are we flexible enough so that it would only be that school, or are we going to have to shift the entire elementary program into remote?
Well, at this point in time, again, the decision would be made depending on the conversation with the Department of Health and the Neshoba Boards of Health, and that's what would happen Monday morning. Is we had because we didn't know what we were coming into Monday morning, so there was a large group that were in that particular meeting. It really depends, and it depends on the contact tracing that has happened. So there are a number of variables that are at play, to be honest with you. It just, there's so many variables, it's hard to say at this point. And of course, that was one of the concerns with the regional high school, right? Is that if you become the super spreader, then you spread it out to all 3 communities, not just one. So, I think that at this point in time, to your question, are we nimble enough to do just 1 building or 2 buildings, for example? The answer would be yes. I believe that we are that nimble right now, and we are set for that. And, I know that people are always looking to say the full return. There's not as much of a positive leaning right now to full return like there is about the possibility of going full remote. If there was a pendulum swinging, it's not quite swinging to the full return yet. It's still swinging more to that full remote. And you take a look at our numbers, and Dr. McGuire and I were having this discussion today, and take a look at the numbers on the daily basis right now across the country, comparatively speaking to where we were in March. It's scary right now as we take a look at these numbers. But in short, to your question, I think we're nimble. I think that we would be able, in a perfect world, to just close down a part of the district, not the district at large, and not close it down, but go to full remote.
Thank you. We're going to come back to the hardware issue. Leah, do you have another question?
Can you just clarify why we can't address that?
I want to get at everybody's questions specific. We're going to address it. I just want to get through the questions about the high school presentation, and then we'll come back to the hardware. Okay. But you said you had several questions before.
Okay. So I guess my next question would be, I have 2 questions. Okay. Question number 1 is, how are we, well, first of all, Steve, can you just clarify, you talked about a survey that the kids were asked to take, but you only got 7 kids to respond?
No, we put it out in a SMORE, and we asked for families to respond about remote learning. After we had sent out our remote learning handbook, we then sent out a SMORE to folks asking for questions that they might have that our task force could answer. Not just students, it was the whole district, and we only had 7 responses.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. So I guess then I'm asking about the last step on your roadmap, which is a very cool graphic. I appreciate that. How are you assessing the effectiveness of our programs? So if, our kids are at the hybrid level at the K-8, and they're at the full remote at the high school level, how and when will we assess its effectiveness?
I can only speak to the high school, and we're trying to get teacher input as to what's working, what's not working, and they're going to make me do more of those videos, I'm sure, to try to get stuff out there for folks. And I think we have to keep asking people what's working and what's not working, and that I'm surveyed out, to tell you the truth, but I think the surveys are helpful if we can spread them out as much as possible, find out what the students think's working, what families think is working and not. So that's something that we will be doing down the road as well. We just got to give it a couple of weeks.
Do you know the frequent, right? So like clearly we're only a weekend, but are you going to try to do that maybe every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
Probably every 2 weeks or so, something like that.
Okay.
I mean, I send out the SMORE weekly. I'm not sure I'm going to continue to do weekly as much later on in the year, but right now there's so much going on. I want people to know what's happening. And I think the SMORE is the easiest way to get the surveys out to folks. So, I mean, I could do it weekly if we needed to. I just think that's overkill. I think we need to give it a couple of weeks to see how things are going, send something out at that point, and then try to adjust when we find out where people are at.
And just to be clear, the only reason why I'm asking this is because I feel like we suffer from an information deficit in that, in human behavior, you typically hear from the people who are unhappy, because people who are unhappy are motivated to act. People who are happy don't act because they have no reason to. And so if we're not gathering a cross-section of opinion, we will never know if what we're doing is actually good. We'll only suffer from kind of this feeling that we're not doing well because we're hearing from people who are unhappy only.
And I have to tell you, it was really refreshing when we got all the positive emails after the survey. I wasn't sure what we were going to get after the survey, the video.
The video,
it was overwhelmingly in support of what we were doing. So I'm a star.
You are a star.
So I'll defer, Kathy, my next question if you want to go to Amy next.
Okay, thank you. Amy, I'll come back to you, Leah. Amy?
Yeah, thank you. I just also wanted to thank Mr. Cullinane for the video. I think it was really helpful to put a face to some of the explanations and just hear a spoken voice rather than, get another email. And it helped explain some of the issues that were relevant at the time. So I know it sounds like it wasn't your first choice of something to do, but I have to say, I think parents really appreciated it.
Well, I'd like to thank those were members of the task force that did the video, and they're the ones they were the ones that worked on the process. So it was good to have them answer the questions as well. So I want to thank all the people on the task force as well.
Yeah,
they did a great
I think
job.
It's a good model for the other schools or principals to look at as a way to just kind of share information. But my question is kind of a follow-up to Leah's, related to evaluating the effectiveness of the program. Because I think one issue that might vary among towns, and Rich alluded to this, is connectivity. Leah talked about the hardware, but I know, we live in an area of Bolton that doesn't have always great Comcast internet signal. And on days that are all remote, the Wednesdays, it can be, I feel like I'm failing on my end to have my kids access all of the available synchronous learning, because we're just limited by what Comcast can give us at any moment in time. So I'm pretty sure that this is not a high school issue per se, but it does affect high schoolers who are having to access, whose only access to school is through an internet signal. And Rich's recommendation was to try to upgrade your upload speed. I don't know if that's what he said, but that comes at a cost to families too. So, and I know we've already made that decision to increase our bill so that we can try to make sure that that doesn't affect our kids' access to education. But I think a survey would be helpful to just gauge how many people that's affecting. Because that's like an important issue for remote learning.
Other questions? Leah?
Okay, so
Yeah.
my question is probably the $1 million question. And I know it's on everyone's mind, and everybody on the screen is interested in getting the kids back to school. I know some parents want full in-person back in school right now. And that there are some areas of the country that are doing that. My question that I actually have written, so I'm not bumbling, is when might we bring the high school back to some level of in-person learning while still maintaining academic rigor? And I know that we talk about the numbers being suspect, but we are at the lowest level of positive cases that we probably will be at, which is next to none. And so it's hard to fathom why the high school is full remote when surrounding high schools are not. And what we can do, I'm asking you guys, as you look into your crystal ball, how and when can the community expect us to bring our high school students back in for learning, just like several surrounding towns?
And in my opinion, we're getting more from the remote learning than we would from the hybrid learning, in that the teachers are able to see the students every single day. Ms. Belay, would you like to speak on that a little bit?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, this is the silver lining that I'm always referring to. You try to find it where you can, but as our task force really looked at the models for a hybrid return, because of the DESE guidelines and the space that we would want to give students and to be safe, students were only going to be in person 1 day a week. And so the majority of the learning would be remote anyways. And so where we are in terms of thinking about the quality of instruction is that as a launch, it makes sense for students to really, for teachers and students, actually for all of us, to really learn how to use those digital learning tools and to become fluent with our remote instruction, build a really robust program remotely so that ultimately when we do kind of come back, whether it's hybrid or full return, probably more likely the hybrid scenario, we know that we have that strong academic center, foundation, and then we can start to kind of flip into the in-person 1 day a week learning. There's still the logistical issues, of course, and again, I don't have the crystal ball to answer those, but in terms of looking at the situation that we had, if we want to offer a quality high school program, all of our courses, all of our electives, really give the students what they would get academically if they were in person, this seemed to be the best way to launch. And then to kind of grow from there once we know that we have a really strong foundation in the remote learning, since that's going to be a part of what they're receiving, a large part of what they're receiving in any model other than full return.
So Kathy, can I follow up?
Sure.
So I would just say that I totally agree with you that the hybrid model that we were offering in the comprehensive plan is inferior to full remote. But there are hybrid plans out there. I know because I'm teaching high school in one of them right next door, where my students are with me every single day, all of them. So some of them are at home and some of them are at school. They flip, they flop. They've decided to all stay home, some of them. There are models out there that once you guys get your footing, and I totally understand that and totally respect that, and our teachers are just totally working overtime right now and doing the very best they can. But I think that what the community is wanting to know is, A, how are you assessing the effectiveness of this program? How are you looking out to find other programs that you could perhaps adopt or elements of? And when So that you're not going to have the answer right now. I get that, but people are clamoring for the last part, when. So the sooner you guys could deliver that information, I think the better.
And I think we worked through the superintendent to get that information. Clearly, it is ongoing. And you know firsthand the tremendous amount of work undertaken to get where everybody is today. And it's not one size fits all. But I think that what the superintendent and her administrative team have committed to are updates at each of our meetings. And those updates involve an evaluation of how things are going and looking for ways to transition. Everybody wants to have kids in front of them. I would like to have you guys with me in the same room. This is driving me nuts. It's great to see everybody though. But yeah, Leah, I think that's your comment is duly noted, and I will trust the superintendent and the assistant superintendent and the administrative leadership team to keep us apprised of the steps to get us to that point. Amy?
Okay, thank you. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we talk about this every day. So Leah, I wouldn't want you to think that it's not on our radar. It's on our radar. We have this discussion every day. And just a little bit of a follow-up to one of your questions, because I know that Steve responded to it from a high school lens, but we are in touch with our principals every single day. And we are walking through our buildings. We are connecting with our teachers. So, constantly looking and saying, where are we at? But I want to go back to this is like day 4, right? So I think we need a little bit of time here. And there is no crystal ball. And like I said, if you'd asked me on Friday where I thought I was going to be on Monday and where I landed on Monday, 2 completely different things. This is still in flux. And I think that because we are presenting so much as normal, people forget that we are so much in flux with the pandemic.
Okay. Amy?
This is kind of a follow-up to what Leah asked, but I'm going to ask it in a different way. What are the, and this goes back to the public comment that was read in the beginning. What are the decision points that are driving the decision to change from remote to hybrid? Because I think once people get a better understanding of that, then it'll move the conversation along in the right direction. Because it's one thing to keep saying that we're going to establish the foundations of a strong foundation with the remote learning and with the goal of moving towards hybrid, but then I get confused about what the decision points are because we start talking about COVID cases, but I thought that COVID cases weren't a driver of the decision to offer remote high school. I thought it was more so that we could offer content.
That comment was based more when we're talking to when Steve was asking about the notion of would we have to close down different schools or would we close down the district versus one school? And I think that's kind of where that discussion came up, Amy.
Yeah, I think Elaine asked about it. Maybe I misunderstood Elaine's question because I thought it was related to switching models at the high school, but I think there's just defining the decision points would be helpful. And I had a follow-up question, but now I can't remember it. So
let's Steve, do you have a question?
Well, a question, comment. Once again, I have to listen to Steve, the other Steve, that we're 4 days into this, number one. Number two, we don't know what's coming down the road. If you look at Europe, especially in the United Kingdom now, they're having a major second wave of infection. The same thing in other parts of Europe and Israel. There's major second waves of infection We still have areas of this country that are experiencing significant upticks in their positive testing, and for us to even to try to define a specific point at which then we're going to pivot into remote, into hybrid, or even into full return, and then have to turn around 2, 3, 4 weeks later and to just reverse the whole situation is going to create chaos both for our families and for the students and for the teachers. So, and let us remember that it was the teachers who were pushing for full remote for the whole program.
Thank you.
Right.
Amy, did you remember your question?
I did, thank you.
Good.
I guess this might seem like a crazy question, but I'm wondering if we have the ability to use buses on Wednesdays to get high schoolers to the building in small planned groups.
Brooke?
So I can let Steve respond to that, but certainly that's something that we've had discussion on, not just Wednesdays, but just at other points in time as well, Amy. So I would say that that's not something that's off the table.
Mm-hmm. Steve, did you want to comment? Steve
We
Colleen?
yeah, we can certainly look into that. I know the bus situation has been pretty crazy with the numbers of kids we can put on the buses and whatnot. So because they can't have a full bus, it has to be 26 students.
26 on a 77 passenger.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just, listening to Leah's comments and Amy's comments and Steve's comments, and of course, Amy and Leah, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think either of you were suggesting, well, we should be returning, we should be considering a shift to a new model. I think what's being asked and what has been asked for quite a while is just share out what are the decisions that need to be considered when going from one model to another. Not that the decisions need to be made now, but what are they? And again, if I'm wrong, if I'm misrepresenting your comments, by all means correct me, but I think it gives parents a sense of awareness and involvement when they know what needs to be taken into consideration before any move takes place. I think it's relatively straightforward.
Okay. Rich and then Leah.
Forgive me if I'm not in command of discussion here, but it seems like the governor and the commissioner have this idea that if you're in the clear, that you should consider going back to school, which it seems means less than 5 cases at any one time to be in that clear. So to me, it seems like a really blunt tool because, as Brooke pointed out earlier, all it takes is a couple cases and we're into the red. So it seems to me there isn't good criteria. I crave this criteria. It doesn't seem like the state's really providing it, or what they've provided is kind of not a very good one. If you look at that map, there's actually 2 scales on it. 3 of the colors are done in per 100,000, and then the clear one's done like less than 5. So they weren't even using the right population numbers at one point. So they've updated it to the more recent census. So, I crave the same thing. I'd love to know what it is. I think all the schools, when I look at this, well, what was the criteria when we shut down? Well, I think it was Brooke made a different decision because we had cases in the school and there was a lot of unknown. I think it was a very prudent decision. But for a lot of other schools, they didn't quite know what to do until the governor's order came, and then that's when they shut down. So, it could be something as subjective as the governor thinks it's okay now, right?
Well, I think that that discussion has to take place initially with Brooke and her administrative leadership team, and then it comes to the school committee. But what I hear the essential question is, what are the decisions that need to be made in order to make any kind of transition? And that could go either way. Brooke talked about the pendulum. It could go, what are the criteria that make us go fully remote? And on the other side of it, what are the decisions that would compel us to move to a more inclusive student at the schools model? So I think that's for further discussion. And I would like the superintendent and the administrative leadership team to take that into consideration and perhaps come back with some consideration of that.
And you know, I know that we're talking high school right now, but honestly, I feel every bit as strongly about this with our K kids as I do with the high school.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see us get those K kids in a much into our, you know, the schools much more frequently, and even grade ones. You know, the learning for reading is critical at that age group. And I worry very much about that. So I know that right now we're focused on high school, but to me, it's so much broader than that.
Well, it is. It's a K-12 issue. And I think that now that school has begun, and again, it's not to have anything definitive, but if you're spitballing, you know, the considerations, what would they be? And
Right.
I think that to bring that back to us for further discussion with us.
And I would agree with Rich too. I mean, there was some, you're right, Rich. There were some things put out by the DESE in the state, but it's very, very loose, very, very loose, and not the type of thing that I think you're looking for as I listen to Amy and Leah's or Mike's questions.
I would like to move the, well, Sharon's got her hand up. Sharon, go ahead. Sharon.
I was trying to unmute. I wanted to just kind of throw out an idea here, because I was so inspired by listening to the administrators talking about silver linings and talking about seeing opportunities. And I'm wondering if we can try and switch the conversation a little bit within the communities to be more around engaging people in thinking about, you know, what's working well, what are the positives here? Because by doing this remote learning for the high school, we are able to offer a good academic program. We are able to offer all of the electives, all of the things that are positives and what the children are doing. If that might really help people to be able to focus more on taking advantage of the opportunities that we have, rather than feeling like, rather than complaining or feeling like we're missing something. We're making the best that we can of a really difficult situation. But I think it's good practice on the part of everyone, in students and parents and the community and everyone, to really think about and have the conversation be about things that are working for us, and the work that has been done to get us to this point.
Thank you. What I'd like to do is to be able to go back to the issue that was raised relative to technology. And there were two. One was questioning or asking the question about whether or not the issue with the technological problems people are having has to do with hardware. And then the other one, to Amy's point, how to address the issue of members of the school community that have issues with bandwidth, connectivity, reliable internet. So I don't know if, Todd, you want to address that? And if
I'll
we
take it.
come back to this with more information, then let us know that too. But Brooke, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So a couple of things here too. I mean, we can only do what we can do as a school district. And so I think we need to keep that in mind too. as it is, when people connect with us because they're having really serious issues or issues in terms of not being able to afford something or whatnot, they don't hesitate to reach out to us. And we deal with all of those on a case-by-case basis. And we've done that since March, and we've done a substantial amount of that in the last 2 weeks. So I would want to put that on the table first, so that please know that if somebody reaches out to us with a major issue, we get back to them right away on it to help support. We have no control over the bandwidth in Bolton. I mean, there's just nothing we can do about that. Do you know what I mean? We do the best we can with what we can, you know, or well, any of the communities, it doesn't matter what community. I would tell you that that our IT department, though, does communicate with Comcast and the different providers that are out there. So I wouldn't want you to think that the school district operates in isolation, because we don't. We do stay connected with all of those companies, that the key providers that are out there in the 3 communities. With regards to the actual Chromebooks and the hardware component to that, this kind of gets back to Leah's question, I think. I don't see her on the screen there, but I'm sure she's there. There she is. Yeah. Okay. You know, I think for us right now, Leah, we absolutely understand. We understand. I think the big thing for us right now was to make sure that we could get the Chromebooks into as many hands as we could. And that, I think that still is a rolling out process here. That's not what you're asking, Leah. But I would also, you know, I think that we said that before, we felt really blessed because we were very proactive with this, and we had a lot of the Chromebooks in hand as we made a move in. We're not a Malden that's sitting there with 4,000 Chromebooks short. Like we were in a good place with that. Could we upgrade, or should we upgrade? I don't know if that's really what you're asking or not. I don't have an answer on that, to be honest with you. We felt that the Chromebook level that we've got right now is pretty standard across the state. So it's not like we just went and said, hey, we're just getting the cheapest Chromebook we can. That wasn't, you know, what we did. But again, I would go along with what Janine is saying. This is a moment of opportunity. Say, okay, did this work on mass? If it didn't, maybe we need to tweak. Maybe we need to pivot. Maybe we need to do something different. And I don't think either Todd or I really would be the best ones to give you details on that. That probably would be more of a Chi question, quite frankly, than it is an us. But I would tell you that, again, we're monitoring this every single day. One of the things that I wouldn't say this bothers me. I think it's just that people don't understand that, because our style of leadership is that we are always looking to get better at our craft. That's just the administrative team's approach. And so with that, and with this incredible, whatever this is that we're living through right now, we are constantly in contact with each other and talking through issues, or trying to blunt issues or concerns, and trying to be proactive where we can and whatnot. That is happening every single day, all day long. That doesn't mean we won't miss things, though, Leah. So right now, at this point in time, I think we're going to stay with what we've got at this moment in time, and we'll analyze it as time goes on.
Brooke, just a question relative to people who are experiencing difficulties, whether they be technological or you know, issues with a user that's not familiar with how to whatever. Is there a place that people, or is there someone people email with their issues, or call with their issues, so we can keep track of what we're seeing to see
Yes.
whether it's user error or if there is a hardware problem? So if we can look at that data that's been collected, and again, to echo several people, we're just starting. It's essentially we're 1 week in. So if we could come back to that to see what the data shows. Yes, Brooke?
And I think Todd will probably, Todd, are you comfortable responding to that, or do you want me to take that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I could just, you know, echo the amount of work that our technology department has been doing since March. This team has not stopped.
Yeah.
They are fielding tech tickets like they've never fielded from
Yeah.
staff, from students, from families, and are getting to them. So by emailing Chromebook support at nrsd.net, they are responding to tech issues, Chromebook issues, etc. Keep in mind the Chromebooks that were, decided upon for this district multiple years ago were designed to, be sustainable in a setting that kids were using them in school and then bringing them home, not, necessarily in a global pandemic where now every kid is remote. And like I mentioned earlier, it's not the device necessarily as it is the ability and the capacity that Google Meet in the Google Suite is able to right now. So in terms of upping the capacity or upping a better version of the Chromebook, that involves a tremendous amount of money. And we budget for that evergreening of those devices, 5 years out, in the multiple grade levels that we've done. Our ability to have gotten Chromebooks for our 3 through 5 students and have them equipped with them, honestly, is unsurpassed. I mean, you are talking districts that just have not been able to even get them for their students. And this tech team has gotten anybody who has asked for one a device in their hands, and they are just working to their capacity right now. And I just was reading an email from one of our principals thanking them tremendously because they have just been so incredibly helpful.
So
we are tracking, Kathy, to your point.
And we are. The data's there.
Okay, and at some point you'll bring it to us, but I
Yep.
think it's also important to know, and I'm sure that the principals push this information out, that there is a contact for getting support for the Chromebook. So as much as that can be emphasized for folks, that would be wonderful. So,
yep.
Yes, Brooke.
I have one last thing. This goes back to Elaine's question way before, because I didn't get a chance to slip it in there. But I would want you to know that the whole restorative justice started before COVID was even in our world. So this didn't happen during the COVID.
Yep.
We started this process of working through restorative justice practices before COVID.
Okay. Any other questions for the high school folks? Because then I want to make sure that we answer some of the other questions relative to other areas. Seeing none, I would like to thank Steve and John and Janine and Matt and Tanya for all the hard work. I was on the high school task force meetings when I could, just so impressed with the team itself, but the work that you folks have done and the way you've used technology and just the culture that you're building there around really working together on behalf of the kids. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining us tonight, and keep up the good work. And we look forward to hearing more as maybe we're into day 7 or 8 of the school year. Just keep us posted, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night. So I think Amy had asked some questions, and I think about the extracurricular at the high school. I just briefly, open houses at each school.
Sure, we can talk about that quickly.
Extracurricular activities, questions about staffing and remote learning academy substitutes, Zoom use by teachers, and instrumental lessons at the elementary and middle schools. So between you and Todd, can we get those done?
Most of them, I think we can. The open house, you'll see, we've had some pretty extensive meetings on the open house and the processes that will happen. I think, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe our open houses will be happening the week of October 5th. They'll be done virtually.
The week after next.
Yeah, and so
at all schools the week after next.
Right. So stay tuned as the principals will push information out about that. Staffing, Anne-Marie, do you want to speak to staffing just really quickly on that? Because we really did start fully staffed, but then we had a little, we had a little change or two.
Well, and I think this is going to be, the year of the, the year that's going to happen, because it's such a flux year, things
Yeah.
change in an instant. Yesterday we had a retirement announcement, effective tomorrow, so that sort of thing. But we did, through Herculean efforts by the principals, interviewing and getting recommendations and doing reference checks, and then Vicki and Darcy were doing the onboarding weekends, nights. So we did start with our professional staff. On opening day, we were fully staffed. We have and had a vacancy for a second school nurse at the high school, but Principal Cullinane and nurse leader Lisa have decided that at this point, while most of the students aren't there, it's not necessary to fill that position just now. So we have posted it, and we've gathered a pool of candidates so that when the time comes, they'll be ready to pounce and get that position filled. But right now, they think that this one nurse at the high school is sufficient. We have a couple of instructional assistant vacancies that are still out there, and those are also in flux, but we're well on it, and those will be either in process or are well on their way.
The question was asked about the Remote Learning Academy absences. What exactly were you looking at there, Amy? Just so I can better understand your question.
I think substitutes, not absences. Was my question whether there's an issue with staffing substitutes for the Remote Learning Academy?
The high school, each of the teachers at the high school has got an asynchronous packet that's available, so that if they should take ill and not be there, so that the substitute would be able to use that packet to get going. I think at the middle school and at the elementary schools, they've got something similar. They've got some asynchronous work that could be left in case of absence. Also too, and this isn't my area of strength, so I'm telling you what I've heard, but I can't say that I understand it 150%. Part of the problem with the remote, of course, is that it's logging in, and doing that. So, but the answer to that was that the instructional assistant, if there's an instructional assistant in the classroom, they can be made the co-owner, so that they're able to help themselves, and also help the sub to log in. Also, Frontline, which is the system we use to secure substitutes, has got a function so that if someone is out unexpectedly, they're able to leave instructions for the substitute teacher that will help them, whether it's remote or in person, to get through the day. As always, the generosity and grace of spirit of the fellow teachers, I think will do a long way to help our substitutes, and with the remote learning, if they find themselves in the position, to need to do that. And also too, the way this all usually falls out with the subs is that each school ends up with a couple that are their go-to subs. They're the ones that are in the building often enough so that they're familiar with the procedures, they're familiar with the staff, and that I think goes a long way, as well as the teacher helpers to get them through. So no problems yet. Fingers are crossed. This is going to be. Yeah, that's right.
The Zoom, I wasn't sure exactly what your question was with regards to the Zoom, but I think Todd may have answered it earlier. Did he?
Yeah, we addressed that earlier.
Okay, good enough. And the instrumental music, I don't know that I have an answer for the instrumental music.
I reached out to the principals on that, Brooke, and so it's different at different schools, but I talked with Principal Mulcairn, and he's ready to launch instrumentals. And there's been a variety of proposed schedules from his teachers. So launching those schedules is what he's reporting on, and that's going to be coming out shortly. At Burbank, they're not offering individual instrumental lessons, but they are offering ensemble lessons taught within instrumental classes such as band. It's an additional offering in addition to general music. And then students that are enrolled in ensembles and band have 2 classes per week right now. Those are being taught in small group format and held remotely on the students' learning from home days. And currently over in Lancaster, they've got a total of 11 ensembles running, 4 groups for grades 6, 7, respectively, and 3 for grade 8. So those are in process at those elementary and middle schools right now as it relates to instrumental offerings.
So I think those are all the questions.
Just did we cover extracurriculars too? Because I got a report back that they're determining viability of running all of the extracurricular activities right now, but what are currently confirmed would be student council, gaming club, creative writing club, chorus, and robotics.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for Brooke or Todd or Anne Marie? Well, Pat's coming up on the agenda, but relative to reopening updates, Leah?
Okay, and so it can be about K through 8 right now, Kathy?
It can.
All right. So this is kind of a delicate question, and I don't want it to be misinterpreted. You guys all know that I'm a teacher, and teachers are my people. And so I am not criticizing anyone, and I want this to be taken in that light, please. But what I'm wondering from a parent's lens, should, on the remote days, the kids who are engaging in hybrid and they're there for 2 days and then they're home for 3 days, on the 3 days that they're home, are the teachers being instructed or are teams building lesson plans for the home days that should keep the kids busy for the duration of the day? Does it vary by grade level, on purpose? Can you guys just talk a little bit about those home days and how we are handling, or rather, keeping teaching and learning going during those at-home days?
Todd, did you want to take that, or
I mean, as written in the comprehensive plan, there should be a mix of asynchronous, and synchronous activities within, the remote and the hybrid models. But those days that they're out, there are planned activities for them, check-ins with teachers. Same with the Remote Learning Academy. We certainly, today being a Wednesday, we've had lots of conversations around there, certainly being requirements for kids to check in, turn something in, formative assessments that certainly inform the next day's teaching and the next day's curriculum when those kids are back in on their days that they're in person.
So just to follow up, like they're supposed to be kind of blocked out, like this 30 minutes you do this and the next 30 minutes, or is it just like a holistic assignment that the kids are given for the day?
No, I would, and I would defer to the individual building principals, because each building has developed its own schedule as it relates to that. So I don't want to speak, I don't want to speak for the principals. They'd have to be on to
yeah, I was just going to
share
suggest
with
the
you
same
their
thing.
specific schedule for that particular building.
So I think that's more a principal
Yeah.
response than it is for Todd and I for specificity.
And so the principals are trying to create an umbrella expectation for all of their grade levels, and they're the point person for parents to communicate with.
Well, I think like always, they're the point person in the buildings. Yes, no different than any other time. If you've got questions, you should be going to, as you would know, Leah, teacher first. And if you're not comfortable with the response that you get from the teacher, then you go to the principal or the assistant principal, right? So this time is no different than any other time from that lens.
Amy?
Thank you. I think my question is somewhat of a follow-up to Leah's, but I was going to ask whether we would be able to get an update similar to what we got from the high school at this meeting from, I don't know how we'd want to break it out, like middle school or in elementary altogether, and then the Remote Learning Academy.
I think I would break it out even more. I think I would do the middle schools and the elementaries, because they're both juggernauts onto themselves, and then the Remote Learning Academy works in all of that.
Yes.
So I would break it up between elementary and middle, and we absolutely can do that.
That would be amazing, because I found that this update was helpful, just to talk about some of the issues as they continually evaluate the effectiveness of each model. And I think it'll be even more helpful at our next meeting after some more time has gone by, because what I'm finding with the hybrid model is that because of how the schedules work out, I need to give, I'm telling myself that we need to give it time to kind of work out some of the kinks. Related to what Leah's talking about, because I think that the schedules, the at-home schedules are going to take some adjusting to keep.
So I want to say thank you for that, because you're right. And we continue, that's why I say we are talking every day, because we know glitches are going to happen. We know there's nothing perfect about this, nothing normal, nothing perfect. And we're trying to still build normal into something abnormal. And it's not an easy pathway for us. I am so appreciative of our parents right now, and they've been amazing partners in all of this. And I just wanted to give a shout out to our parents for working so well with their kids, with their schools, with their teachers, and with their administrators. It's been amazing to watch.
Thank you. Other questions for Brooke, Todd, Anne Marie, relative to the updates? At this point in time, 1 week in, Leah?
This might be totally premature, but I wonder if you've thought about it. If we were to go full remote, like Marlboro got the message today, they're full remote tomorrow. Boom.
And that's exactly my point.
Yeah. So I just wonder if that were to happen, would the cohorts merge during at-home time, that full remote time, or would we try to maintain the model?
So that's a great question. And I don't know, Todd, if you want me to take that, or if you want to take it, it doesn't make any difference to me. So, okay, let me start, and then Todd, you can chime in. So one of the things, and one of you had alluded to this tonight, and I didn't jump on it, but certainly I was thinking in the back of my mind, that's exactly right. One of the whole reasons for the remote at the high school is because we don't want to be jumping back and forth, and we're concerned about that. And again, I say to you, we could be sitting here tonight very differently, like Marlboro, quite frankly. We're not, but we could have been. And so we're very attuned to that. And one of the reasons, and I know that our kids would never do this, Dover Sherborne or Lincoln Sudbury, right? So, I mean, there's just so much that could go awry. And I think that for a million reasons, one of the reasons why that remote model was important to us is because we knew it would give us the rigor we were looking for, and keep stability in that building at this point in time. We are set, so the high school is all kind of set for that lens. The middle school and elementary, if they're in remote right now, because we literally have a class of remote at every single grade level, right, in every building, and then we have our own remote learning academy at the middle school level right now. So those will stay put. Those are all self-sustaining. And again, we did that purposely so that there won't be any mixture or mixing or whatever. So that if our schools, for example, if Florence Sawyer was to go remote tomorrow, those students who full remote, those students who are already in remote would stay exactly where they should be. And those teachers and the others are ready to go so that they could take their class into remote. So there won't be any confusion or mixing up or anything like that. Everybody should be completely ready to go.
But I mean the A and B cohort. Like, would they come together, the kids, the Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday kids? Would they start meeting with the teacher Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, that I don't have an answer for, to be honest with you. That's a great question. I'd have to talk to the principals and see what their thinking is along those lines, because I don't have an answer, unless Todd does, but I don't.
So I'd like to move, if there are no objections. Clearly, there are some things that we would like some answers to. And as we meet on the 7th, perhaps we can get updates with regard to Leah's question relative to moving the schools that are in hybrid to full remote, and what the grouping would look like.
The A and B cohorts, yeah. We'll talk to the principals about that, because I'm sure that they know the answer. I don't know the answer here to give to you, Leah, tonight, but I'm sure that they do.
Okay.
We've definitely talked about different options that exist. One of them would be merging, but also one of them would be taking a look at the model of the Remote Learning Academy, where there's different sections. So in the morning, one group of teachers sees all their teachers in the morning, and then they flip flop. So we've looked at different models. We just haven't arrived at one of them because, you know, we're talking hypotheticals, but certain multiple options have been on the table.
Okay, thank you. If there are no objections, I'd like to move to the next agenda item.
Sure.
Seeing none. So we have an MSBA update, Brooke?
Yeah, this will just be really quick tonight. Just to let you know that MSBA has been just continues to be amazing to work with, and have honored my request for a slight extension here as we build our school building committee. And the school building committee is the makeup for it. It's pretty straightforward in terms of what MSBA is looking for. You know, they're looking for somebody, for example, from a FinCom. They're looking for somebody, you know, school committee members, obviously. They're looking, they're very specific. Rob Frieswick, of course, you know, myself, Todd, Pat, like they're pretty specific. So the only place that we've still got some openings here that we're going to look at, and they've put me in touch with another regional school who's just wrapped up in terms of how they created their school committee, school building committee, and it just said this is a model that you might want to consider following in terms of recruiting community members now and our school committee members, because those are kind of like the last two components now for us to pull together in this. So it's just waiting to, I've certainly done outreach to them, just waiting for them. They've got a couple of templates that they're going to offer to me as well. And so parents can expect that we will be sending something out early next week. And I'll be sending something out to our school committee here too, likely this weekend. So just know that that's on its way. And that's it for the MSBA update.
Questions for Brooke? Amy?
I'm so sorry if I missed this. Did you say we got the extension? Was
Yes.
that the first thing you said? Thank you.
I talked too quickly. I know that.
Other questions for Brooke? Okay. So the next agenda item is updating school committee protocols. So probably 20 minutes ago, I was thinking about this, not that I wasn't paying attention to everything else, but I was thinking about this and the exercise that I wanted, or I planned for us to engage in. And I originally had planned this item on the 9th. Our meetings get very rich with discussion and good questions. And so the same thing was happening tonight. It's 8:07. I'm perfectly willing to engage with you for 15 minutes as we evaluate the protocols that folks indicated that they wanted to change. But let me ask you this. Given everything that we need to talk about and do, and I'm just going to do a quick poll just to see, is there anything in those current protocols that you absolutely positively cannot live with and you would want to pay immediate attention to? Because it just seems incongruous to me that there's so much we need to talk about. We did not have the time to do them. I am adverse, given all the additional meetings we've had last year. I set up workshops before our regular meetings to finish those off. I just want to get a sense. Can we put those aside until the dust settles? Is there anything that you feel that really has to be addressed soon? So I want to just put it to you guys. So I will check in alphabetical order. So Kathy Codian, I will go with the will of the assembly. Amy Cohen, your thoughts?
I like how you phrased that. I will also go with the will of the assembly.
I think we're going to be a bunch of sheep. I don't know. Let's just see if someone's going to shake this puppy up. Brett, any thoughts about the protocols?
You can put it on hold.
Thank you. Rich,
I guess I'm a sheep.
I meant it in a good way, you know, in the cute, fluffy way. Okay. Joseph,
Nothing, Madam Chairman.
thank you. Mike,
I'm perfectly content deferring to a later date.
thank you. Mary,
Put it off till later.
thank you. Sharon,
I'm good to wait.
thank you. Mr. Rubenstein,
I'm good to wait.
Elaine,
I'm content.
Leah,
I also am not concerned about this. I would just recommend that we do the Roberts Rules training sooner than later.
I'm getting everybody a copy of this, and there'll be a quiz. Thank you. No, it's on our list of things to do. Thank you. Okay, so we will table it and we will move on to other things. Thank you for your input. Okay, so now we will move to the business manager report. Pat.
Hi, good evening.
Sure.
So as you can see on the list, it is A through E as far as items tonight, but I think the year-end revenue update is duplicate. So I'm going to go right to the treasurer's report.
Okay.
As you can see, there are June, July, and August treasurer reports.
Whoops, hang on a second, Steve. Steve's got his hand up right away.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
Yeah, I've got a question on the year-end results report of the $656,000. Is that over and above what we have to reimburse? Or is that in addition to what we have to reimburse our annual rotating in and out of?
Well, I'm doing the treasurer's reports first, and then
okay.
I just wanted to know if anybody had any questions about that.
I have a question about that.
Okay.
When will we see another bank listed?
Very soon.
Thank you.
In our HR office, our treasurer is a dual duty person. She serves the role of treasurer and HR. She's one of our HR people and has to process all that paperwork for new people, for new hires, and insurance and everything else. So you'll see that very soon.
Thank
Probably
you.
in the next week or so. You'll see it for the next report anyway, I'm sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions about anything on any of these treasurer's reports?
I had a question. It's Rich Eckel.
Yep, Rich.
Am I recognized?
I recognize you, yes.
I'm just looking through here. It seems June's balance and July's balance are the same if you go from page 2 to page 3. So I think July's balance on page 3 should be 4.4 million. Am I right? Or did that increase because of the 13 million in income that we got?
And
when I look on page 2, I see July's balance is 4.4 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go to page 3 and July's balance is back up at 10 million.
That's because the assessments come in the month of July.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's what the 13 million represents. It's,
right. Exactly.
The last do the schools play or the towns pay quarterly?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Thanks.
So does anybody have any questions? Anybody else? Okay. If I could move on. The results of operations.
I have a quick question.
Oh, you do? I'm sorry.
Wait, Leah. Good.
I'm sorry. I wonder, is this the time at which I should ask if the towns were willing to give you some of the COVID funding that they got?
Brooke, I'm gonna going to pass that one to you. We're working on that right now.
I would say that's a work in progress for us right now, Leah, because I think that there's some mixed feelings about where the school district would sit in terms of having some of that money come over to our side of the house, because you can imagine that the towns feel that they've got needs that they need to have met here too right now. And so we're very conscientious of that, and we're conscientious of the fact that the school district also got some money, some CARES money earlier on. So certainly Pat has been in touch with every one of our 3 communities. They're all in very different places. I think that would be fair to say, Pat, in terms of what they got and in terms of where they see us fitting into that picture. So it's not the same in every community. Every community sees it very differently. And so Pat is continuing to work with each of our, like her counterparts in each of our communities. Is that a fair representation, Pat? Okay.
Yes, I would say. Too early to report.
Yeah, I think it's too early to report too. I would say though that I'm willing to bet within the next month and a half or so, we can probably come a little tighter and say, this is where we've landed in each of the 3 communities. But I will tell you, it's very, very different in each community.
Thank
Great
you.
question.
So I'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
The year-end results of operations, this is the unaudited. There still could be some changes to some of these numbers, but nothing that I'm aware of that would be significant. At the end of the year, we had a balance of $656,402 in our budget, and that means that we did not spend as much money as we had budgeted for. And there were a couple of reasons for that, and you can see a couple of them. One of them in the system-wide line, $372,000, and a lot of that is attributed to transportation, because we had the abrupt stop in transporting our kids in March. So that's one big piece of it. Some of the other pluses and minuses in all of the different departments, we were aware of them happening. And I think you can see that just the fact that there weren't students in the buildings, there were some money in utilities. There were site-based funds that weren't used. There are programs that didn't happen.
Pat, we also want to state though that we always have to put money back into that E&D because we need to turn it over the next year.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
That's critical. Absolutely.
Right. And one of the reasons why early on we put a freeze on site-based funds in anticipation that we may be in a bad place at year end, and we needed to make sure that we had the funding going into the next year so that we didn't deplete everything in our E&D. So anyway,
excuse me, Mike has a question.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm not at all suggesting that we spend it in any particular way, because I know that we have a lot of unaccounted for expenses, but I'm just wondering, Pat, how typical is our total available at the end of a fiscal year compared to previous years? How typical is that number?
Well, it seems to me in the last few years, we've had something or other happening. Like last year, we had a significant surplus in revenues, which brought the number up as far as the number that we could put into E&D. This year, I think that this is probably typical. The numbers may be typical.
I think so too.
I think the numbers typical, but we really tried hard to hold as tight as we could. And you have to also remember, we did spend some money on things in anticipation of COVID needs coming forward, so that we wouldn't be left with taxing the next year's budget with everything.
And Pat, let's
So-
just remember, how much did we pull from E&D last year that we needed to put in? Actually, this is about 140,000 less than we
Exactly.
took out last year.
Exactly.
So that's critical for us to keep in mind. So this number to me is just, it's just okay. I wish that it was a little higher, quite frankly, because it means that we're going to be at a sink by about 140,000 overarchingly in E&D.
Steve, question?
Yeah, $363,000 over budget for spec ed, for special education. Someone want to speak to that?
There are a number of different things that were in play there. There were a couple of legal issues. So her legal line was a little bit higher than normal this year. She settled some cases, and so there were some changes there. And we had kids move into the district, and we had to apply for extraordinary aid.
That was
this
a bigger,
year.
that was our bigger issue, is the number of kids that moved into the district that we weren't counting on. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just what happens. And this is typical of what happens, is a reflection of that.
And typically, when we're able to apply for extraordinary aid, it means that they're expensive out of district tuitions. A lot of times they're not high enough that we would even bother to go down that avenue, but we did, and we did receive it.
And the Mary Rowlandson?
Amy had her hand up, Steve. I'll come back to you. Amy?
I can I'm happy to defer to Steve and let him finish his question.
Go ahead, Steve.
And so my next question would be Mary Rowlandson, $136,000.
That would be the addition of a kindergarten teacher that we had to add, and that was due to enrollment, and that was ongoing during the year. We knew that that line was, that Mary Rowlandson was going to be over by a significant amount.
Okay, Amy?
Yeah, forgive me because I'm new to looking at the budget, but there's two things I wanted to ask about. Full day kindergarten was a new expense this year. Is that just rolled into these other categories within the school, like the cost of?
No, that's a huge whole other explanation, Amy. We can have that offline with you because we've been through that with school committee a number of times. So we're happy to have that discussion offline and explain how that works, because it will take us quite a bit of time to explain that tonight.
Okay, thank you. And my second question has to do with just, so I'm understanding this correctly, the excess or the available funds that are left over from fiscal year 20 are required to be put into E&D, like?
Correct.
That
is correct.
Schools work, but once they get into E&D, that is a fund that has no restrictions, or like that's there to spend as you decide is necessary for the academic year based on things you can't anticipate. Is that kind of what it's like a, no?
Well, it has many restrictions. You can't spend money from E&D without the school committee's approval, for one thing. But it's part of the accounting process, and it's like net worth, only in regards to our 100 fund, which is the general fund. And the state reviews our books at the end of the year and determines what in fact should actually go into E&D. And I'll go into that a little bit further when I put up my slides about E&D. But that's where this money is going.
But I think, Amy, what's really important for our new members to remember is that that number is basically about $140,000 out of sync with the amount of money that we borrow. We so-called borrow. We got, and this is past practice for a million years. It's not this administration. And we've tried desperately to get off this borrowing hamster wheel, but they borrow every year for the next year's budget. And so we borrowed for this particular 20 year budget about 800,000. And what this is doing is only putting back about 660,000 from 800,000 that we have borrowed. So it's really critical that we've got that money to put back in, because this year and for 21, we've got $1 million that we are borrowing from E&D. So we've got to keep that E&D number strong, because that's how our budget process has worked for many, many, many years.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Rich?
Just forgive my newness, but is this analogous to free cash, Pat? In other words,
this is the net results of this process. It goes into E&D, and then it's certified by the state.
okay.
And
So just so I understand the implications, what Brooke is saying is, so in Stowe, we have $6 million or so in free cash, or you could call it savings. But we don't use that to fund our operations. We use that to fund things like capital items. And I guess what I hear you saying is, you guys are funding the budget from free cash or from E&D. Is that right?
Some
you're
of
borrowing.
it, a portion, a small portion, comparatively speaking.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to understand that, because that's
you're
something, as a former finance committee chair, that's something they warn against.
We absolutely understand.
And actually, this particular year, fiscal year 20, during our budget process, we started the reduction process. And actually what we used was 750,000, because we had been up at 1,900,000, 800. We were starting to come down. And if things had gone differently, I would think that every year it would continue to go down by 50 or 100,000 until we get off this wheel. And then E&D would be used for emergencies and for major capital items that couldn't be funded by the budget.
That was our goal, Rich. And we had a track record of showing that. And actually, I mentioned that every time I came to FinCom and Stowe, that we were looking at that. But this year blew us out of the water.
So for
of course.
Budget and Warrant Subcommittee, we'll have a budget orientation, an orientation to the budget process. So the new folks are invited to that, and any veterans who want a refresher course. So that'll be coming up in the next couple of months. Are we, Patty, ready to move on to your next report?
I'll move on, sure. And I also have the year-end revenue report here. This is unaudited as well. And we had a surplus of revenue of $108,979 at year-end. And most of it was because we got some additional Chapter 70 aid, and we also got some additional regional transportation, though it isn't reflective on this report, and I'll explain to you why, and that will be on the slides.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions about the revenue?
Okay, keep going.
Okay, so if you want to move to the slides on E&D, I'll try to go through this pretty quickly.
Sure. Let me see. Okay.
So on 7/1/2019, the state certified $2,226,665 of E&D for the district. This year, we had excess revenue of $108,979, which would be added. We had expenditure budget balance of $656,402, which would be added. And then we committed funds for the fiscal year 21 budget of $1,220,000. Now, $1 million is what we would call the wheel that we were just speaking about, using $1 million to fund of the budget every year. The 220,000 was the money that we talked about last year, the excess revenue we knew was coming in, and we wanted to commit some of it to full day kindergarten to fund the process. So what you'll see is that the $220,000 has been added, and that is because we have the additional expense of the full day kindergarten being absorbed by the total budget now, rather than being supported by a revenue fund in tuitions. So I project E&D to be on 7/1/2020, which is past, but that's the official date of it. 1,772,046. So does anybody have any questions about that?
Which is down about
Amy,
400,000.
and then Leah.
What's the goal like for maintaining the balance of that account? So it's like a percentage of the operating budget, or is it?
Well, typically the state says that we must return anything in excess of 5% of the new year's budget. So if at some point in time, and now 5% of our budget is somewhere over $2 million, like 2.5 million, whatever. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but anything beyond that, we would have to return to the towns. So the healthiest, it would be up to 5% of our budget. So that would be up to 5% of the fiscal year 21 budget.
But we're not there, Amy.
We're not anywhere near there. As a matter of fact, it seems to be depleting.
Yeah.
So the next page.
Oh wait, wait,
We have another question. Okay.
Oh, sorry, Pat.
Okay.
I wonder, so like of a district our size, I get like the annual number that we retain and put in E&D has to be under 5% of our total budget. But what is a typical E&D fund for a district our size? Is it 5 million?
Well, I don't know what you're comparing it to. For a school district, I've seen 100,000. I've seen, numbers greater, up to 5%, because you have to remember anything above 5% of your budget, you'd have to return to the member towns.
Oh, total.
So, right. If the total in E&D exceeds 5% of your budget, then that excess has to be returned to the towns.
And Pat, you said that the auditor wants us to have a minimum amount in E&D as well, right?
Well, the auditors typically will not recommend any amount. It's what the member towns are comfortable with.
Okay.
So at this point, having the fact that COVID happened, and we can see that this fund is depleting, it's good that we were where we were, because we'd be much lower than we are right now. And who knows what the next fiscal year is going to bring, because it's still so uncertain, and it's a very expensive pandemic.
I have one.
Leah?
I'm just trying to get my head around this. So we want to get off the hamster wheel. If we decided to just go cold turkey, that means that E&D would be left with 1.7 million if we didn't reimburse the 1.2.
If we didn't well, this is where we stand right now. Like going into the next year, we're going to, we've already removed the 1.2 million. So going forward, if we commit more money and don't have any excess at the end of the next year, at the end of this year, fiscal year 21, then we'd see this go down lower and lower.
And I think we don't want to touch this right now, Leah, because we don't know if we might need some of this in this upcoming school year. And it's exactly as Pat just said, this is a very expensive pandemic.
But I'm just trying to understand, if we reimburse at the end of the next fiscal year, if we reimburse, we're going to hope to bring it back up to 1.99.
Correct.
Or excuse me,
at least to 1.7 and hold steady.
Could I
reimburse the
say
1.2? We would be able to hold steady.
Okay, so once we take out the 1.2, we are down to 500,000 in E&D.
No, it's confusing. I know it's very confusing.
I'm sorry.
So
I
mean,
this is a math problem, Leah.
Excuse me, Rich.
Sorry.
Would it be, is there anything we have to approve relative to this, Pat, or is it just FYI?
No, this is an FYI, and I can go into this in depth.
So what I would like to suggest, because I know how confusing it is, if we—
It is very confusing for a lot of people, even accountants.
If we could, we don't need information to make a decision about anything tonight for the bottom line and understanding the ins and the outs. Perhaps you could prepare a presentation for October 7th to explain the nuances, the facts and the nuances. Would that be helpful, Amy and Leah, in terms of building understanding?
It would for me, because community members are under the impression that we have lots of free cash.
Well, they would be wrong.
Correct. So I think that it's not just for me, it's for the community.
No, yeah, but let's isolate it and make it a presentation. Are you cool with that, Amy? Great. So we will have we'll have like a little tutorial on E&D on October 7th. Great. Okay, what else you got, Pat?
Regional transportation revolving.
Okay.
I also put up on the website an advisory on the use of regional transportation revolving funds. Basically, what the Department of Education is allowing us to do is, if we budget, in the spring, we budget for a certain amount in revenue for transportation. So basically, it's based on ridership on our buses and whatever. But sometimes we underestimate because maybe in this case, what happened was they used to reimburse us at 72%, but there was a lot of discussion about, this is an unfunded mandate, and so they upped it a little bit. So we got a little bit more than normal at the end of the year. So what they did back in 2015 was they allowed us to take that excess money and put it into a revolving account, and it has to be used in the following year. So this $319,164 is money that is going to go into a revolving account, and I can expense transportation expenses against that revolving account, which takes a little bit more of the pressure off of our budget in fiscal year 21. Because, going forward, I don't know if we'll have this luxury because our transportation costs have gone down. And I sat in a meeting today with Jay Sullivan from the Department of Education, and he was talking about, reminding people that they need to be aware that if their transportation costs go down, then their reimbursements are going to be down. So I'm going to predict next year in the fiscal year 22 budget that we budget even less money, and we'll just keep our fingers crossed and hope that we get more. But
so Pat, really what you need now is a school committee vote to say we need to put this money into
exactly
the regional transportation revolving account. And as school committee members that were on last year, I believe we did the exact same thing last year with an amount of money as well, if memory serves me right.
And the year before that too, we've been doing it.
So this is nothing new to the seasoned school committee members.
So let's have the motion, and after the second, we can entertain questions. So Elaine, would you make a motion?
Sure.
Relative to that item?
Yeah, I move to approve the transfer of excess regional transportation funds from FY20 year end in the amount of $319,164.00 to the Regional Transportation Revolving Fund.
Second,
Second.
questions, discussion? Leah?
Just to clarify, the revolving regional transportation fund, does that get dissolved at the end of each fiscal year?
It has to be used to either
During that year.
offset transportation costs, or it has to go back into E&D.
Thank you.
They require that you use it.
Other questions?
I had a question. So this revolving fund is, again, I think I just heard it was zeroed out every year. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that, I mean, so revolving funds don't need to do that. It's just, so we
They
create a
don't all
revolving,
need to do that.
but this one does.
This one does. And
Got it.
I put up the memo on that if you want to read into it. It's up on the website.
Thank you. Sorry, didn't do my homework.
That's okay.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, I will do the roll call vote. So the motion is to approve the transfer of excess regional transportation funds from FY20 year end in the amount of $319,164.00 to the Regional Transportation Revolving Fund.
Second.
Who seconded? I think we had a second before that. I was just reading the motion before the vote.
Oh, okay, so moved.
I think we're good. I vote yes. Amy?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Elaine?
Yes.
And Leah?
Yes.
Okay, unanimously approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are we good, Pat? Thank you so much. We will now move to the subcommittee reports. No report from Budget and Warrant. Mary, do you have a report for personnel?
I do. The Personnel Subcommittee met on September 16th. We discussed the agenda item of the superintendent's salary increase, as well as contract language change in the superintendent's contract. Our next Personnel Subcommittee meeting is October 14th at 4 o'clock, and that agenda will include the superintendent's goals.
Thank you, Mary. Leah, anything from policy?
So we have not had another meeting since last time I shared out, but I just wanted to remind the superintendent that we need to have her reach down into the high school and get us an elected student representative. And I can forward the kind of job description that we came up with. I just don't know, Brooke, how you want to proceed.
So we can have this discussion offline, actually, because I'm not exactly sure what you've done. So
Right, but I think if you've put together a job description, it should come before the committee so that we're aware of it. So perhaps we put that on the agenda for October 7th?
Sure.
Okay, but then you can simultaneously work with Brooke because you know, she's the gatekeeper to get you into talking to folks at the high school.
Yeah, so the only thing I would say is that putting the job description, which is like basic at best, to the committee on October 7th, I think you said, that then would prevent a student rep from coming onto the committee for a little while. So
but there may be some, I mean, if we're adopting it as part of our policy and changing the policy or addressing the policy and creating a protocol, if you will, I think the committee should see what the plan is and provide input and feedback, as we do with all new policies and protocols. So
Do we have
XI
input?
So
do
go
we-
ahead.
Do we have input on protocols or just policy? Because I don't think this is a policy change.
Well, I think that it is something that impacts, we do to a certain extent, depending on the protocol, where this is something that is germane to the entire committee. I just think it would be good practice to let us see what, I think there was pretty widespread agreement that although we worked with some incredible students, we wanted to see the role change. So to bring that before the committee, before we go forward and engage to see what the, if you will, the job description is, I think is best practice. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts about that. And what you do is you come to the committee with a recommendation. So you come with what you have, and then we discuss it and go from there. So if it's a timeline issue, again, I think that if there is a procedure for electing somebody, perhaps you can go forward with that, with the understanding that the job description is tentative, pending approval of the school committee. So however we can make that work, you know, October 7th is 2 weeks away. So
Leah, would you be able to send that to me so I can take a look at it, please?
Sure, yeah, I'll send you the minutes from our meeting that Amy took.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, so
I was just going to say one other thing for the policy subcommittee that I just remembered is that because school councils are something that we're going to be taking a look at a little bit, we wanted to perhaps invite Brooke to one of our subcommittees to just talk about that, like the process and the entity itself. So we'll perhaps send you an email on that, Brooke.
That sounds
Invite
great.
you.
yeah, anytime you need Brooke at a meeting, just let her know. And she's very good about attending. Amy, did you have a question or a comment?
No, I was just going to remind Mia that the tentative job description was in the minutes. I didn't know if that would speed up the timeline at all since it's already available, but that's fine.
But it should come to the committee for discussion, and we would make it a separate agenda item, like a new business type of a thing.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Communication, Mike.
Yeah, so communication subcommittee met on Monday the 14th with Superintendent Clenchy and Dr. McGuire. It was a really fruitful meeting, and we discussed sort of what at first glance appear to be new initiatives, which seem like we are adding to our administrative workload, but I think we're hoping that this will sort of cut back on the workload in the long run. So there are 3 primary initiatives that we're going to be exploring and hopefully implementing relatively soon. The first one.
Excuse me, Mike, just a point of order, if you will. Any recommendations that you're making in terms of communication, again, just as the student rep, should come before the school committee for discussion. So if you want to come forward with recommendations for different things, we should make it an agenda item so we can give it the time necessary to discuss it.
Well, then why don't we defer the conversation until it's an agenda item?
Okay, and I'm looking at if we could, would the second meeting in October, the second meeting in October work for you guys?
Well, you know, after having thought of it, and Brett and Sharon, you can chime in. I think for some or all of these ideas, they're sort of time sensitive, and so
You want to do it at the next meeting then?
I'd prefer that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so and again, the subcommittees are do the work, have goals delegated to them through the committee, and do not make decisions independent of the committee. They they do come back to the committee with their work and make recommendations. So it's got to be part of our process.
Yep.
And we will schedule it as soon as we can. So we will look at the student job description, student rep job description, and communication proposals for initiatives on October 7th. Okay? Sounds good. Anything else to report from communication? Great, thank you. Okay, so at this time, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session. Elaine?
I move to go into executive session at 8:50 p.m. pursuant to M.G.L. Chapter 30A, Section 21.2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Executive session to include Superintendent Clenchey. Committee will resume to open session.
Okay. Can I have a second? Steve Rubenstein indicated a second. Roll call vote. Kathy Codian, yes. Amy?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Elaine?
Yes.
And Leah?
Yes.
Oh, okay. We will, okay, Mike. All right. Thank you. We are returning from executive session, which was we entered into to discuss superintendent's salary increase, and we are going to make the vote public. Mary, could you make the motion, please?
Okay. So I move that the superintendent's salary for FY 2021, July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021, be increased by 1.5%, and that the following changes be made to the current superintendent's contract under Section 13, vacation. The superintendent shall be entitled to 30 days of vacation during each remaining contract year of this agreement. The superintendent shall be allowed to carry over up to 10 days from any one contract year to the next.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Leah got the second. Okay, roll call vote. Kathy Codian, yes. Amy Cohen,
Yes.
Brett Collins,
Yes.
Rich Eckel,
Yes.
Joseph Gleason,
Yes.
Mike Horesh,
Yes.
Mary McCarthy,
Yes.
Sharon Pock,
Yes.
Steve Rubenstein is absent, Elaine Sanfilippo,
Yes.
and Leah Vivirito.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. And now we will have a motion to accept the consent agenda. Elaine?
Yes, I move to approve the consent agenda of September 23rd, 2020, containing the meeting minutes of September 9th, 2020, and September 16th, 2020, and the warrants of September 25th, 2020.
Second.
Leah, seconded. Any questions or discussion? Okay, vote. Codian, yes. Cohen?
Yes.
Collins?
Yes.
Eckel?
Yes.
Gleason?
Yes.
Horesh?
Yes.
McCarthy?
Yes.
Pock?
Yes.
Rubenstein? Oh, he's absent. Keep looking for him. Sanfilippo?
Yes.
And Vivirito.
Yes.
Thank you. Items to be considered for next agenda. I have, yes, Brooke.
I was going to say we have E&D explanation.
Yep.
And we're going to probably ask the middle school principals to come forward and report out next, and then we'll have the elementary come thereafter.
Okay, we have a presentation by the policy subcommittee relative to the student representative to the school committee and a revised job description. And also we have a presentation by the communications committee relative to proposed initiatives. Looking at the planning calendar, and Brooke, this needs to go, it wasn't posted with the materials, so if we could make sure that's done. The superintendent's goals will probably be moved to a later date. Are we going to get a guidance update from the high school, do you know?
Guidance update from the guidance department?
Well, I'm looking at the planning calendar.
Oh, actually, no, we've done that. We've already done that earlier, so we're good. That shouldn't even really be on there right now.
All right, we really need to update the planning calendar. You and I can work on this.
Let's do that. That's great.
I think that there's no extended day update, or do we have nothing?
No.
All right, so let's look at the parking lot, see if there's anything we want to put on there. Student voice is going to be mentioned. Anything there that we need to?
I worry, Kathy, that you've already got a heavy agenda with just the items that you've got, quite frankly, because the middle school presentation will take quite a bit of time. The E&D explanation will take quite a bit of time. And I suspect that the communication committee, there are 3 items to discuss, not just one. And I think that will take time. So I think you're going to have, a heavy load already next. Just my personal opinion.
No, that's fine. Anything else, Mike?
Yeah, this doesn't necessarily have to be for the subsequent school committee agenda. I'm just maybe an opportunity to include it as part of a meeting for a later date. But one, maybe an update on the long-term principal search at the high school.
Okay.
And then the other is another update on the addition of diversity, equity, and inclusion into our district curriculum.
Okay, I got it in the parking lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine?
Getting into October, we probably need an update on the mascot situation.
Okay. And Amy? Amy, you're muted.
Thank you. I was wondering if we should get an update on the committee that's being formed for MSBA, like that thing.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That sounds good. That could be under the superintendent's. Some of these things might be under the superintendent's update. Okay. If there is nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Who so moved it?
So moved.
Oh, Mary. Okay, second.
Second.
Okay.
Hand is up. So Amy seconds. All right. Cody Ann, yes. Cohen.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Eckel.
Yeah.
Leeson.
Yes.
Horesh.
Yes.
McCarthy.
Yes.
Hawk.
Yes.
Sanfilippo.
Yes.
Vivirito. Where is she? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Good work tonight, everybody. Appreciate everyone.
Have a good evening.
Hard work. Good night.